across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company this Thursday. There's loads to talk about, including with my first guest, Isabel Oakeshott, about Rachel Reeves. Should she resign? This scandal has dominated the day, and there are so many questions that aren't answered. Did the Prime Minister just accept verbal reassurances, or did he have the paperwork? Will she have to pay back £38,000 in rent to her tenants? And also, will there be a further investigation, including by Southwark Council, who've given us a pretty wishy-washy statement, to be brutally frank, that I will read out in a second. We'll talk as well, 2p or not 2p, should income tax go up? We'll talk as well about Starmer refusing to rule out raising income tax in the budget. The mask slipped, I think, yesterday, no doubt about that. The Tories saying Reeves should go. Also, Gazan students allowed to bring their families into Britain. Is this a good idea, especially as some of them may support Hamas? We'll talk about Trump lowering tariffs on China and announcing an end to rare earths roadblock after the Xi meeting. There's so much to talk about. Prince Andrew as well. Kinsey Schofield will update us on whether he will face a private prosecution. Loads to discuss here on Talk between now and 7. And of course, I want to get your voice on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, to 0344 499 1000. Same number, of course, for WhatsApp text messages, and to give me a ring, and I'll take as many calls as I can between now and 7, as I always do. Loads to discuss, as I say, here on Talk Drive. Let's get started. Well, just before we get started, I just want to say that on yesterday's show, I may have suggested that the Attorney General's political views and work as a barrister representing people, including Gerry Adams and Shamima Begum, may have had an influence on the failure to successfully prosecute Kneecap for allegedly displaying a flag in support of Hezbollah. His office has been in touch and made clear that his political views were irrelevant to this issue, and clarify that he gave his consent for the prosecution to proceed when requested by the Crown Prosecution Service. I am happy to make that clear. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves. She is a person under pressure. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. Great to see you in the studio. How are you doing?
Well, I mean, in some ways it's funny, isn't it? Yet another scandal involving a front bench Labour figure, and you can't get more important than Rachel Reeves apart from the Prime Minister.
Especially at the moment, 4 weeks before the budget. I
mean, there's no way, okay, I really hope I'm not going to regret these words. She's not going to have to resign over this, in my opinion. And have we yet had Keir Starmer issuing his full and unequivocal backing?
I don't know. I think we have,
that's
actually.
That's usually
as well.
the end.
And, yeah, indeed. I mean, I don't know about you, Isabel, but if Keir Starmer ever comes out and says, I have full confidence in Peter Cardwell, I have full confidence in Isabel Oakeshott, that's it. Just give up. Book the 2 weeks in Barbados.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw this story, my initial sort of reaction was, oh my God, I can't believe you need a licence, to let out your property. I've never heard of that. Needing a licence to let out your own property. How incredibly irritating. How pen pushing, how form filling, how extra revenue raising annoying is that? But that said, it is this government that has not unravelled that system if it was put in place by the last lot, and therefore they should have to do it too. And whatever the oversight was, she's obviously trying to make it go away as fast as possible. But I was amused to hear about all the extra questions that are now being raised.
Yeah.
Because she was letting the property without a licence, does that make the money she made from it in some way illegitimate?
Well, this is it. And will she have to give back £38,000 to the people who've been living in her house?
She'll then feel how we all feel when we have to pay tax for absolute rubbish that she makes us pay for.
Exactly. Taste of her own medicine, perhaps. Asked several times by journalists if the ethics advisor Sir Laurie Magnus was able to see any evidence other than the Chancellor's account of what happened. The Prime Minister's spokesman refused to answer. You would think, going into a briefing with the lobby, the top political journalists in the country, you would imagine that you would be armed with that information, or maybe they're not telling us for a reason. He also declined, the spokesman, to say if Rachel Reeves had broken the ministerial code, or whether she would resign if she received a fine from the local council. The council themselves, Southwark Council, have given a very, very sort of wishy-washy statement here. Southwark Council requires private landlords to acquire a selective licence in order to rent out their homes if they live in specific areas. This is in order to protect tenants and ensure landlords are complying with housing requirements, providing safe, well-maintained homes. Selective licences are acquired by sending applications to the council, which we then assess and approve subject to conditions. When we become aware of an unlicensed property, we issue a warning letter advising the landlord that they have 21 days to apply for a licence. Enforcement action, such as fines, are reserved for those who do not apply within that time or where a property is found to be in an unsafe condition. We cannot comment on individual cases, but for the sake of a £954 licence, not a sum to be sniffed at, but nonetheless not £38,000 and not the kind of billions of pounds that Rachel Reeves is dealing with. My question is, if our leaders, if the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Isabel, can't get the detail right on her own home, how can we trust her to get the budget right?
Well, we can't. I mean, I've got no faith in her whatsoever to get the budget right. It's not like the last one she did exactly made the country any happier or better off or more prosperous, is it? And now we hear that she is contemplating raising income tax, not by the usual kind of penny on income tax that a lot of political parties seem to think is quite palatable because it sounds so tiny, but by 2 pence on income tax. Now, that would be a breach of their manifesto pledge, of the assurances that they repeatedly gave to voters in the run-up to the general election, that they would not do that. And I think, I really don't think she'll go down the 2p route. I mean, even to put it up at all is going to be problematic. It seems far more likely to me that she would try to raise perhaps the top rate of tax, and nobody seems to be talking about that. I've got no information that she is, but it would be a much more natural thing for a Labour Chancellor to do. But it shows just how dire a situation she's in as she scrabbles around, desperately trying to find ways to drum up money to pay for a ballooning welfare state and, apparent planned rises in the, minimum wage, I think, is being mooted, and, yet more basically burdens on employers, wealth creators, and just ordinary people that are trying to make ends meet. And this is at every level, isn't it? It's at people who are on low incomes, people who are on medium incomes, right the way through to people who are on higher incomes and are feeling absolutely hammered.
Yeah, it's fascinating you mentioned that, and I wonder, I mean, some of the speculation I've been reading today as well, that income tax would go up but national insurance would go down. Well, that would hammer pensioners to a degree as well, because they of course don't pay national insurance, and I wonder if that jiggery-pokery would actually be in some way helpful to the Treasury. Where's the money going to come from? And also the economists, people like Liam Halligan, for example, who are saying, we're actually teetering on the brink here. This isn't about 20 billion. This isn't about 40 billion. This is a possible IMF bailout territory. I don't want to be alarmist about this, but there are some economists who are saying it's far worse than even we're being told.
Absolutely. I was very struck by a comment piece by a very respected city commentator a few weeks ago, writing that he'd been at, I think, was some big economic forum in Washington, and he said, there was fear in the eyes of those participants at that forum, and he said, I've been going to these things for decades. Something is brewing, and it's not just probably just a UK thing that's brewing, but so many people who are expert in this area fear that there is some kind of crisis coming. When it happens, we don't know, but it's that whole thing about markets losing confidence in the ability of this country to live within its means.
Jane's been in touch and says, of course Rachel Reeves should resign. She called for others to do so when in opposition. Also, does she rent her constituency home? So many questions. She does rent out her constituency. Well, we don't know about the constituency. Her constituency is Southwark, isn't it? It is in London, so I think she only has one home. Can we just check that, actually? I think her constituency is there. No, it's Leeds. It's Leeds. Her constituency is in Leeds, so she will have a constituency home in Leeds. I'm pretty sure that she doesn't rent that out. Dawn in Chelmsford says, every Monday morning I say to my wife, what disaster will hit Starmer this week? It started with Lord Ali Closegate, followed by ministerial resignations. Currently we have the Chinese spy fiasco and the Reeves scandal. And Damon in Wigan says, good evening, Peter. Good evening, Damon. Can you just remind me if other ministers that Keir Starmer's had confidence in? Because once he utters those words, that you don't have for the front bench. And once again, Peter, scandal, scandal, scandal. I think Queen sang that song. Thank you, Peter. Well, let's try and remember. Peter Mandelson, Angela Rayner, he had full confidence in. Any others that you can think of?
There's definitely more than that.
Lou Haig as well, Louise Haig.
Tulip
Sadiq, the anti-corruption minister who's facing corruption allegations. Yeah, there's quite a few of them.
I think there's a few more that we've not thought of.
If they come to us in the next few minutes, we'll tell you what they are. Let's talk about someone who definitely doesn't have confidence in Rachel Reeves. That's Kemi Badenoch. Earlier, the Conservative Party leader called for Sir Keir to sack Rachel Reeves if she fails with the economy. Let's hear what she had to say.
You want more of something, you don't tax it. It is a very simple principle. She put taxes on jobs, jobs disappeared. They tax farmers, farmers are closing down. They tax businesses. They're taxing everything. They're taxing education. We're seeing schools close down because they can't afford Labour's taxes. Someone needs to get a grip on it. So Keir Starmer, you need to make sure that your Chancellor gets a grip. If she cannot get a grip on controlling spending, then you need to sack her. Enough is enough.
What do you make of that, Isabel?
Well, I mean, it's Kemi Badenoch trying to get in on the narrative. You know, no one is really listening to Kemi Badenoch at the moment, and she's got precious few opportunities to try to get attention. She's calling for Starmer to sack her if she can't get a grip. It's not going to happen. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen. Sacking your Chancellor is almost always becomes terminal quite quickly.
Yeah, Kwasi Kwarteng and various others, certainly. And John Major, of course, never recovered after mind blank, brain fade.
No, you're looking to me, and I've got exactly the same. It's that stage of the week.
Norman Lamont in office.
Black Wednesday.
Yes, Black Wednesday. Do you know what? His autobiography was brilliant, actually, in office. It's incredibly honest autobiography. It's a really, really good book, In Office by Norman Lamont.
You are more of an anorak than I thought you were. This is how you get your thrills.
This is how I get my kicks. Let's talk about something else, Isabel, that I'd love your opinion on, because as you may know, we've been asking Avon and Somerset Police about Bob Vylan, about Pascal Robinson Foster, who is the singer in Bob Vylan. And as we can see in our little graphic here, it is now 124 days since the incident at Glastonbury, where the singer for Bob Vylan, Pascal Robinson Foster, made that anti-Semitic chant, "Death, death to the IDF." Now, we've been asking for an interview with the Chief Constable, Sarah Crew, of Avon and Somerset Police. We've been told for a second day that's not happening. However, in fairness to Avon and Somerset Police, they have got back to us and there has been a development. So I'm going to read you their statement in full. Avon and Somerset Police: inquiries continue to be carried out in relation to comments made during a performance on stage at Glastonbury Festival on Saturday the 28th of June. It is important we have a full understanding of any legal precedents, which is a complex process, and are working closely with the Crown Prosecution Service around early legal advice. This is the interesting bit. Advice from the Crown Prosecution Service was received last week and is currently being reviewed. The next steps in our ongoing inquiries will be decided with that advice in mind. We will continue to ensure the public and media are updated as our investigation progresses. Well, thank you for the statement, Avon and Somerset Police. It's still 124 days. Pascal Robinson Foster, to our knowledge, hasn't been interviewed, he hasn't been cautioned, he certainly hasn't been arrested, and we don't know if charges or a recommendation for charges has been sent to the CPS. But certainly you've given us an update, that's fair enough, but we're going to keep asking Sarah Crew for an interview. She can do it if she wants to. If there are legal areas she doesn't want to get into, that's okay, we'll accept that. We don't want to prejudice an investigation, but there are serious questions to answer here. Isabel, your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't think you can really prejudice an investigation. So, I mean, I think that I'm kind of semi-impressed by that statement, because it does sound like they are sort of doing something. And in fairness to them, it may have been that they have been kept waiting by the CPS for the advice that they need.
True. That's true.
But what I would say is the police are very, very quick to go knocking down doors of people that tweet things they don't like or do undercover, citizen journalism that they don't like. They batter down doors and, seize people and make them go into a police cell for several hours. And, I don't really think that they needed to wait to interview Bob Vylan, did they? I mean,
maybe they have, but they're not telling us that. But certainly 124 days seems a very, very long period of time. When the guy did it on national television.
Yeah, it was not a subtle thing, was it?
It wasn't. Well, exactly. A bit of breaking news here. I'll get your reaction to this as well, Isabel. Keir Starmer and his independent advisor on ministerial standards have been passed new information in emails sent and received by Chancellor Rachel Reeves' husband regarding their rental arrangements. Downing Street has said Why didn't they just do all this in the first place and get this out of the way? It's just, it's like these tiny little developments that just make it worse and worse and worse and worse.
And then you begin to think, is this going the Angela Rayner way, and I'm going to have to eat my words, and she is going to have to resign? God, it's hard being a minister, isn't it? I mean, just for a second, let's just tiny bit spare a thought. You cannot do anything wrong, can you? You cannot do the tiniest thing. You can't overlook. I'm going to just stand up for politicians here. You know, my partner Richard Tice is a politician. I see it from that side of things. You know, they are dealing with 1,000,001 things every day.
They are, and I've worked with politicians, and I'm somewhere close to you on this. However, when there's a scandal, when it involves really straightforward stuff that actually emails, redacted, whatever, just first rule.
Put it all out there.
First rule of crisis comms. Put it all out there, get it all out there. Don't send a letter late at night. I mean, they were clearly worried about the markets. They were, you know, when she cried the last time the pound tanked, so clearly they were worried about the markets. Isabel, thank you as always.
I do love a scandal, obviously. That's what we're here for. So.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll see how this one develops anyway. We'll bring you all that is. But that is the breaking news that Keir Starmer and his independent advisor on ministerial standards, that is Sir Laurie Magnus, have been passed new information and emails sent and received by Chancellor Rachel Reeves' husband, that's Nicholas Joycey, who is a senior civil servant, regarding their rental arrangements, according to Downing Street. They've now finally actually said something about this after stonewalling all day. Lots more to come in this. We'll talk to Jack Elson, the political editor of The Sun, for his reaction to this. In the meantime, thank you to Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. And this person says, it's not Reeves that should be sacked. Starmer is a very poor judge of character. Is this now approximately 75% of his cabinet that's had issues? I don't think it's as much as that, but certainly more than a comfortable number of people. Paul in Oxford says perhaps the reason Reeves burst out in tears that day is that in the Commons is because she'd been told by the council she must reimburse her tenants £38,000. Well, we still don't know actually why she was crying, but it had a huge effect on the markets. That is something we'll continue to take a look at now. Plenty to discuss between now and 7. There always is here on Talk Drive.
She's not a stupid person, despite what some people might think. She's a very intelligent person and would be seen desperately trying to do the right thing by the law. Of course she should. And this, I think, is a mistake, of course. But I think that it's embarrassing and difficult because it's the sort of thing when you're dealing with taxes and licensing and registration that has legs.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of thing that investigative journalists perfectly legitimately can and will continue to look through. What are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, and especially after Angela Rayner not paying her full stamp duty.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
The Prime Minister's spokesman apparently declined to give further details, but insisted Keir Starmer has full confidence in Rachel Reeves, never a good sign, and that she would be delivering the highly anticipated November the 26th budget, definitely. Now, Starmer, of course, we've learned in the last few minutes, spoke to Isabel about this, and his independent advisor on ministerial standards, Sir Laurie Magnus, have been passed new information in emails sent and received by the Chancellor Rachel Reeves' husband, that is Nicholas Joycey. He is a senior civil servant at the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. This is regarding their rental arrangements, according to Downing Street. I think there are a number of questions still outstanding. What happens to the £38,000 that they've received in rent? Do they have to give that back to the tenants? Could they be fined, for example? Is her licence to be expedited? Now she's presumably applied for that licence, £954 for that licence to Southwark Council. Does she have to wait in a queue, or will that be fast-tracked because she is the Chancellor? And irrespective of how quickly the licence is done, what happens to rent, which is apparently obtained, not quite illegally, but certainly under a cloud because there is no licence there? Well, what happens to that rent? I think there's an awful lot to still come through on this. So that breaking news in the last few minutes. Sir Keir Starmer and his independent advisor on ministerial standards, Sir Laurie Magnus, have been passed new information on emails sent and received by Nicholas Joycey, who is Rachel Reeves' husband, regarding their rental arrangements. And the Prime Minister's spokesman declined to give further details, but insisted Sir Keir has full confidence in Rachel Reeves. She will be delivering the budget on the 26th of November. Well, I mean, they may want that to happen. This is growing. There are more questions. The journalists are going to ask more questions. Actually, Jack Elson will join us in a second. He's just dealing with this right at the moment. As soon as we can talk to him, we will, of course. But the news is just breaking in regard to that development. Alison's been in touch and says perhaps this is the way Reeves wants to leave the front bench. She would sooner leave for this reason than because of her total incompetence. Would it be funny when she loses her seat at the next election that she cannot evict her tenants because of the new Angela Rayner renters law, says Alison. Well, Chris in Manchester has been in touch on the matter of income tax and the potential increase in income tax. It's interesting because the proposal, certainly there's so much speculation around this time, there always is about a month before the budget. Will income tax go up by 2p? Could national insurance go down? Does that then hammer pensioners who generally don't pay, I should say, national insurance, but they do generally pay income tax depending on their income? Chris is in Manchester and has some thoughts about this. Chris, thanks for the call. 0344 499 1000 is the number you called. What would you like to say?
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. Good to speak to you again. The one thought I have, I'm a retired person myself. I'm a retired police officer, so I'm in receipt of a police pension, and I also get the state pension. But I still work, and my earned income, the income that I gain from working, is not subject to national insurance. And I've always thought that's a huge bonus for me, but I don't see what the logic of it is. And as I understand it, there are anywhere between 1.5 and 2 million people of pensionable age who remain in full-time employment. I don't think it will be unreasonable to impose, perhaps not necessarily the full levy, but perhaps a percentage of the levy of national insurance on earned income, because by and large, it's probably people's choice to carry on working, perhaps rather than necessity maybe. And that would broad. I read a paper that recently that said that could raise possibly up to $5 billion, and I think that will be quite a. Obviously, it's never going to be popular placing an additional taxation burden on the elderly. I think this one would be maybe an easier target and wouldn't attract a huge amount of criticism.
Is it fair though, Chris? That's the question. Is it fair? Because raising income tax, some people say, actually is the fairest way of doing it. But if you reduce national insurance, well, the net result for many people would presumably not be a huge amount. But actually for people like those pensioners you talk about, they could be hammered.
Yeah, they could. I mean, to be honest, all this jiggery-pokery of 2 off and 2 on, I wouldn't bother with all that. I think that'll just cause confusion. I think maybe a 1p increase in income tax and tax earned income by people of pensionable age, just the earned income, not the pension income, place national insurance. And that I've roughly worked out. I think a penny in the pound raises 7.8 billion. And taxing earned income by pensioners raises about 5. So there's 12.5 billion. I know that's nowhere near the 50 billion that she needs, but it's a fair way towards it. And I think at the end of the day, everybody's bracing themselves for an increase in tax. We don't like it. It's clearly going to be contrary to their manifesto promises. But at the end of the day, we are where we are. I'm not a supporter of Labour. I'm a lifelong Conservative.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, this ever increasing gap between what we earn and what we spend is not going to be narrow, particularly as Labour are unlikely to curtail any of their spending plans.
Yeah, those are all good points. Listen, thank you, Chris. That was Chris in Manchester there. Let's speak to Stephen in Ludlow. Should say, Stephen, that we will be speaking to Jack Elsom in a minute, but he's just dealing with his breaking news. He's a political editor of The Sun, and when a big story like this happens, he of course has to react. But Stephen, it's great to have you with us. 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say about Rachel Reeves, Stephen?
Hi, Peter. Thank you for taking my call. I know the focus has been basically about the licensing side, but another angle perhaps is, and this is predicated on the reporting which says it's a family home that's been rented. This is a Rachel Reeves story.
Yes.
If this is the case and it is a family home, then my assumption would be that the Reeves have actually sought permission from the lender if the property is mortgaged.
Yeah, you do have to do that, don't you? Because I remember when I got my mortgage, I remember being told, if you want to rent this out, you've got to at least inform the lender that you're doing that, and your mortgage can be predicated upon whether it's a buy-to-let. Then you get your mortgage 5 years previously, you don't think you're necessarily going to rent it out, then you're in a situation where actually you move jobs or you want to you're in a position to keep the house, like Rachel Reeves for example, but you've got to inform the lender. It'll be very interesting to find out whether she's done that or not as well.
Yeah, if she hasn't informed the lender, or she hasn't changed the mortgage to a buy-to-let, and it'd be interesting to know what the position the lender would take.
Yeah, and also things like insurance. Are you insured as well? Well, there's so many questions we need to know. Listen, thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate your call. That's Stephen in Ludlow there. And if you want to get your voice on the air, like those two guys, like Stephen and indeed like our caller from Manchester, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Paul in Belfast has been in touch and says Angela Rayner was brought down by saying she wasn't given tax advice, which was incorrect. Rachel Reeves is saying she wasn't advised about the licence fee by her estate agents. Really? A letting agent in Southwark where licences are required and the agent didn't know? Why isn't the estate agent being asked whether they advised Rachel from accounts about being licensed? That's a very, very good point. Well, we don't know who the estate agent is, we don't know who the letting agent is. All those questions have to be asked. And the problem is with a scandal like this, I used to work in political communications. I used to be a special advisor, as you probably know, worked in government for 3.5 years. The number one rule when something like this happens is, the number one rule, as I was talking about with Isabel about 10 minutes ago, is get it all out in the public domain. Do the investigation, get all the paperwork in as much as you can. Okay, we're not interested in details about Rachel Reeves' kids or their address or whatever. Obviously there are some issues that are private and we get that, but if there's a little bit of redaction, fine. But but get it all out in the public domain. There are far too many questions. We had stonewalling today from Downing Street, and yet more stonewalling. There are so many questions here. We'll get into that with Jack Elsom in a minute. Bill in Northumberland says a 2p increase is 10% less income. It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Enjoy the debate, says Bill. Thank you. And Graham says, if you or I forgot to have a landlord's licence for renting out a house in Dulwich, then Southwark Council would prosecute us in double quick time before you could say, trust me, I'm an economist, says Graham, who from Bushy, who often sends in messages like that have their tongue in their cheek and perhaps a raised eyebrow as well. That's quite a feat to do both. Can I do that? Not really. Lots to discuss with Jack Elsom from The Sun, who will hopefully be with us in a minute or two. He's a busy boy. Lots to respond to in this major story with breaking news and more lines coming through all the time. Stay with us here on Talk to talk about Rachel Reeves's future.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, let's go straight to Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun. Jack, you're a busy boy. Thank you for joining us. Your reaction to this breaking news?
Well, it's pretty extraordinary, Peter. You know, Rachel Reeves is now back under the spotlight by the number 10 ethics advisor, Slippery Magnus. Your viewers might remember that late last night, after the Daily Mail published these allegations about her unlawfully renting out her house in Dulwich, she referred this to the Prime Minister, who referred it to his independent ethics advisor, who then decided very, very quickly that it was an open and shut case and she had nothing to answer for and had done this in error. We then had a pretty risible lobby briefing this morning with the Prime Minister's spokesman, where he basically wouldn't answer any questions about whether she had broken the ministerial code, whether she'd have to pay back any of this rent or the like. And now we find out 6 hours later that actually new emails have been passed from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves to the Prime Minister, and that the ethics advisor is now back investigating her. And for everyone that thought that the initial decision, which was incredibly quick and the snap judgment was made here, was probably not the wise course of action, one has been vindicated, but also the problem is that for the markets who are watching this all unfold, they are clearly going to be, maybe potentially in a state of panic about this. Now, I think it's important to stress, because all of your viewers would have just seen a lot of breaking news alerts from across different outlets saying that Rachel Reeves is back under investigation by the sleaze investigator. That is what Number 10 can say on the record at the moment, and their hands are pretty tied because it is with Laurie Magnus and they don't want to prejudge anything. But what I can say is that from speaking to people at the higher levels of government is that many people think that actually the new emails will vindicate Rachel Reeves, and that it will be emails, I think, between her husband, Nick Joycey, who is himself a senior civil servant, and the letting agency in Dulwich, which I think will show that actually potentially Reeves can wriggle off the hook here. But it is not helpful for Downing Street to have these distractions. Keir Starmer says that he has full confidence in her. Having all of this go on a month before a pretty miserable budget is really, really quite bad for the government.
Especially, as he said, he's had full confidence in many other people who then have fallen on their swords. Like, we were trying to think of all of them a bit earlier on. Isabel Oakeshott,
Peter Mandelson, Angela Rayner,
Louise Haig. I mean, there's so
yeah.
many of them. Jane has a brilliant text message here, and I'd love you to respond to this, Jack. Surely after the Angela Rayner scandal, all the Labour front bench should have double-checked their own housing issues, made sure they were watertight. I mean, that is absolutely the case, isn't it? I mean, having worked in political communications myself, if there's something like this, you get all the information out there ASAP, you make it end as soon as possible, and you make sure that no one else is in a position where that was the case. I remember when Michael Gove, for example, said that he'd taken cocaine. I had to go to my minister and say, I need to ask you this because we're going to get the question. People like Jack Elsom are going to ring us up and say, is there, have you taken Class A drugs previously? And I'm going to have an answer. So we need to prepare here. Was there a lack of preparation for a scandal like this, do you think, Jack?
Yes, definitely. And even if ministers were not making sure everything was squeaky clean, I can assure you that people in the Conservative Party Central Office and the Reform Party Central Office were the ones also making sure that everything was squeaky clean when it came to members of the cabinet. And clearly now they have found a pretty big shocker when it comes to the Chancellor. And yet again, we are talking about one of Keir Starmer's most senior ministers under the spotlight. And, what really did for the Tories in the end was just this sort of stench of sleaze that really wouldn't go away. And sort of all the infighting and the rest of it. It does seem this government, who, let's remember, not just came to government on a platform of change, but also they took the moral high ground and said that they were, much sort of better and, much more squeaky clean than these awful Conservatives. And now we've had Rachel Reeves under the spotlight. We obviously had Peter Mandelson. We've had Angela Rayner. We've had Louise Hay. We've had Shannara Ali, we've had a sort of a string of ministers, Jonathan Reynolds, all have to apologise in some sort of scandal. And for a public watching on, for a government that said the grown-ups are finally back in charge, well, it looks like anything but. We have to wait to see what these emails say, and may potentially Rachel Reeves is vindicated. But clearly there has been an unlawful renting here, and whatever it is a massive distraction. And the Prime Minister at the moment can't afford distractions because his policy programme is all being gummed up. He's having to prepare for a pretty miserable budget at the moment. Illegal migration is out of control, and this is probably just the last thing that they want.
Speaking of that wait, Sir Laurie Magnus, unlike Avon and Somerset Police, generally does things quite quickly. How long are we going to have to wait, do you think? This will be a priority, of course. Presumably the next couple of days we'll get some sort of answer on this?
I think we're going to have these emails, the new emails, published very soon. In the next hour or so, I would expect the emails to be published, and they will be between Nick Joycey, the Chancellor's husband, and I think it's going to be the letting agents down in Dulwich.
So we could, in theory, see those actual emails, but really before the end of Talk Drive in a very short period of time. Okay.
Yes, I'm sure we'll see them pretty soon. And then it's all to do with what does Laurie Magnus do, because he can take several steps. Then he can either say, like he did in the early hours of this morning, that it's an open and shut case and that no further action is required. Or he can then decide to open an investigation to see if there has been a breach of the ministerial code. And if there has been a breach of the ministerial code, it will be very difficult for Rachel Reeves to hang on, because the Prime Minister previously said, in opposition, any ministerial breach of the code warrants a resignation. Now, listen, what we have seen in the past as well is inadvertent breaches, which is obviously, something Rachel Reeves would probably plead, seeing as that she has said that she was unaware of this. But let's see how it plans out. Laurie Magnus now will be poring over these emails, published very shortly, and then we will get to the bottom of what action he's going to take, if any.
Jack, just to finish the story from earlier, you'll be shocked to learn that my old boss, James Broganshire, had not taken Class A drugs. And I then said, so James, the line to take is that you didn't take any lines.
Very good, very good. So that's why you get paid the big bucks.
I wish I did, not like you. Thank you, Jack, much appreciated. Jack Elsom there, the political editor of The Sun. We have heard from various politicians about this. We heard from Kemi Badenoch earlier. This was the view of the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, a bit earlier today on the BBC.
I think the Prime Minister needs to show some backbone. We need to have a proper investigation into exactly what has happened. This seems to be an attempt just to put this whole thing to bed with a quick exchange of letters, I believe, last night. And this was a Prime Minister who, when he came into office on the steps of Downing Street, talked about restoring the dignity and integrity of government. And we've seen a whole litany of these instances, Angela Rayner, Louise Hay, and others who have fallen well short of that standard. And if he's to stand by his word, then I think he should be concluding her position is untenable.
Mel Stride there, the Shadow Chancellor, talking about the government's attempts to put this to bed. They haven't been successful. Speaking of putting it to bed, let's go to Bedfordshire. And Liam, who's on the line, 0344 499 1000. Liam, what do you make of this shambles?
Yeah, hi, Pete.
Hi there.
Look, it all comes down to governance, right? So you'd expect Rachel Reeves to have a fairly high level of attention to detail, given the job.
Very good point, yes.
And therefore you should understand what the governance process is for your job. But the fact that her husband seems to have come up with some documents now that either help or don't help, I'm not quite sure. But how was she not aware of that? Look, I have some sympathy, actually. I'm just changing tack quickly for the family that's living in that house. What's going to happen to them?
Well, what if they get their 38 grand back? I mean, that's another question. But Liam,
well, they might get it back. But look, if there's a financial penalty, the council probably gets it back, and that might be the 38 grand that Rachel Reeves has.
But that's Rachel Reeves' problem, though. But no, Liam, is it not reasonable to say, hold on a second, I've got this massive job, it's really huge, we're moving house, actually, darling, my husband, you can deal with this, says Rachel Reeves, and just let him deal with it. I mean, is that not a reasonable thing in a marriage? Obviously people split things up. Is it really her fault?
Well, that might wash if he wasn't a senior civil servant. But he knows the rules as well.
Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't know that. I'm not making excuses for him by any stretch of the imagination, Liam. But this is the problem, because if you submit a tax return, you sign a form saying this is all accurate. Yeah. But I mean, maybe you don't know all the rules of tax. You're trusting your accountants to do that. If you then go to I can't believe I'm defending Rachel Reeves' husband, but if you go to an estate agent or a letting agent and you say, right, can you give me all the paperwork? What's needed here? Do it, just tell me everything I need to do to rent out our home. And they don't tell you, well, actually, there's this thing. Look, ignorance is no defence, as any first-year law student will tell you. But do you have any sympathy for Rachel Reeves and Nicholas Joycey?
No, because I don't think you could have ignorance at that level of the jobs they're involved in. Yes, if it may be you or me, we could argue that, but I'm not even sure we'd fall into that trap.
Well, I'll tell you something, they'd come down on us like a ton of bricks, Liam, when they found out. And I do wonder, are they going to come down on her like a ton of bricks? Is she going to be fined? Is she then going to have to pay for this? And will she be put to the front of the queue because she's a senior politician?
Just one last point, though, which is around, obviously this is just another scenario of a Labour MP, whilst they're in power, trying to coin as much as they can from the job because they realise they're not going to be there in the next election. It's a 4-bedroom house, as I understand it. she's put that out to the private market rather than maybe allowing an asylum seeker to use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's their choice, I suppose. And actually, you know, there are loads of people who've taken in Ukrainian refugees and things like that, or done it below market price. Listen, that's their decision, I suppose. But it's a fair point, especially when they're asking many of the rest of us to have asylum seekers living in hotels or homes of multiple occupancy near them on the doorstep. Yeah, I expect that there aren't too many homes of multiple occupancy with asylum seekers in the nice area of South London where Rachel Reeves and her family have been living. Certainly aren't any in Downing Street. Liam, thank you. Appreciate that. That's Liam in Bedfordshire there. Sean in Grimsby says it's just scandal after scandal for this Labour Party. They're making the Tories look virtuous and decent. You couldn't make this guff up. Brian says Labour are like Tarzan swinging from one crisis to another. When are they going to fall? And Leslie says, I used to say every week there's some scandal with the government. Now it's becoming daily. And Terry in Slough says what this Labour government lacks in intelligence, it more than makes up with in stupidity. And another person says, I love that chickens are coming home to roost, but cannot wait for the same to happen to Starmer. It's just a matter of time, and hopefully soon. Love your shows, Peter, says someone who hasn't put their name on, but whoever it is, thank you very much. Patrick Woods says, I am a pensioner who works. My state pension and small government pension are classed as income. They're just over my tax allowance, so I pay tax on the balance, as well as every penny I earn in my part-time job. And Dawn in Chelmsford says, the Reeves renting fiasco is pure yes, Prime Minister. I imagine the Starmer Sir Humphrey is looking for a form of words to minimise the disaster. Well, I think they probably are. Although they haven't minimised this disaster at all. Like all the disasters that befall this government, it has been badly handled. Another one that might be coming down the track is the fact that they're allowing Gazan students in. They're allowed to bring their families into Britain. Is that a good idea? I'm suggesting that it probably isn't. We're going to talk to Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control. He's their research director, and get your view on that as well. If you want to get your call in, want to get your voice on the air, or send me a voice note on this number as well, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Axel was ordering suspicious Amazon packages to a neighbour's house. The neighbour complained he kept having to receive them, and Alphonse said, I will tell Axel to stop ordering them. Did he question his son as to what he was ordering online? Why he was ordering a knife on Amazon? We don't know. But what we do know is they failed to stop their son. They bought him the tablet that he researched genocide on. They allowed him to conceal ricin in his messy bedroom. They did not alert the police and have him detained when a week prior to the massacre, Alphonse stopped his son from getting in a cab to go to his old school, presumably to commit another attack.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Louise has been in touch on Twitter saying, I had a feeling there'd be another bombshell. Well, the bombshells just keep coming in regard to the scandals engulfing this government. Dallas says, hi Peter, stop playing devil's advocate and defending Reeves and her husband. I live thousands of miles away and even I am aware renting properties is heavily regulated and the rules have recently been changed. She should have checked. No excuses. Angela says, good afternoon Peter, another day, another scandal in government. Rachel Reeves is free Chancellor's accommodation in number 11. Surely any rent earned should go back to the state. Seems okay for them to make loads of money, but not for us, says Angela. There are quite a number of people who have grace and favour residences as well in various places, not just number 10, number 11, Chequers of course, Dorneywood, Hillsborough Castle in Northern Ireland where I spent a few nights as well. Sean in Bridlington says, surely Starmer must be due to go on a foreign trip about now. That's a very good point, Sean. Never hear Kieran. I'm sure he's off on his travels very soon. And Kath from Lincolnshire says, great show again. Regarding Reeves, I'm sorry, but anyone who was thinking about renting a house out would look at the implications like tax, insurance regulations, rights, fire regulations, and what is needed, etc., etc., etc. Kath, I think your point is absolutely a good one. But surely, if there's a rental agency, you say, sort all this out, whatever you need, just let me know, kind of thing. I mean, I wouldn't know where to start, but I would go to letting agents, and presumably they would have some idea. Are they at fault? Is Nicholas Joycey at fault, who is Rachel Reeves' husband? We should find out. Jack Elson was saying those emails are probably going to come out in the next hour or so. As soon as we get them, we'll put them on the screen and we'll make sure that we read them out here on Talk. So stay tuned for all of that. There's another story I want to talk about now. This is Gazan students coming to Britain are going to be allowed to bring their families in. This is a reversal of government policy, another U-turn. They took up places at universities in September under special arrangements agreed by the Home Office, but some have said they would not be able to take up scholarships because it would mean leaving their children behind in the war-torn strip. Now, most international students were banned from bringing dependents to Britain. This is Rishi Sunak's crackdown. Labour said it wasn't going to lift the ban, but now the government has said it will support the evacuation of dependents on a case-by-case basis. Those wishing to rejoin the relatives in the UK will need to apply for a student-dependent visa application and have evidence of sufficient funds, which is about £6,000 or £7,000. There's no cap on the number of children, but the students will have to show they can support them financially. Robert, I'm going to be honest with you. This is Robert Bates, who's joining us now. This is from the Centre for Migration Control. He's the research director. Robert, I'm nervous about this, to be honest. Foreign students in general is an area where there are far too many loopholes, and I'm also nervous about where they're coming from. If people want to study in this country and they're legitimately here, that's fine, but they knew at the start, they knew last month, that they weren't going to bring their dependents. If they can't continue in those courses because they have caring obligations for those dependents, well, go back to Gaza is my thought. Am I being completely heartless in this?
No, I think you're actually showing the common sense that probably most people in the country think about this situation. Of course, it is a massive U-turn from the government, who promised us that these individuals, these 75 or so students, would not be able to bring dependents with them. And I think, unfortunately, what we might be seeing here is the beginning of the thin end of a wedge being inserted and attempts to sort of prise open more routes from the Gaza Strip. And of course, when you look at countries right next to Gaza, such as Egypt, Jordan, they are very, very reluctant to take any individuals from these countries. And when you see statistics from Poland, which shows a surge of support for Hamas in recent months as well, and studies from Denmark, which shows sort of when Gazans are brought into the country, the likelihood of those individuals ending up with criminal convictions as well. There is a real national security potential crisis that could be we could be exposed to if this route becomes any larger than it already is. And frankly, it is already far too large. You know, the fact that they are breaking the rules that are put in place on dependents that the last Conservative government introduced, which really tried to clamp down on them effectively because these students blackmailed them and said, well, we're not going to be able to come at all, and you're going to lose your sort of PR exercise at the international community that you're looking to put out to the international community if we're not able to come. And the government sort of said, okay, well, we'll change the rules. We'll completely overhaul actual visa regulations and make sure that you guys have an exception. I think it's a ridiculous state of affairs and just shows really how the government is prepared to expose the British public to risk if it suits the kind of narrative and performative altruism that they're very, very keen on at the moment.
Obviously, there will be problems, or at least people raising objections or concerns in regard to the security situation as well. Now, I'm sure there are many people, well, I know there are many people in the Gaza Strip who hate Hamas, have absolutely no truck with them, and have been kept under, you know, a miserable regime for 20 years. But there will be some who support Hamas and are not fans of our country. And if they are dependents, I mean, I just wonder about the security checks on these people as well, how robust those checks are, Robert.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, what are we going to do? Call up the sort of Hamas-controlled authorities in the Gaza Strip and go, hey, we're just checking in. Has X, Y, or Z got a criminal record that you can tell us about? Are we really going to trust the information that we are able to glean from that area of the world? And of course, you know, this comes at a time when we're seeing really sort of very regular anti-Semitic hate marches on the streets of London and elsewhere in the UK. And we have to really ask, if we're bringing in individuals from a country where support for Hamas is incredibly high, are we actually just going to be feeding a problem that is really already making the UK look like a really hate-filled place in the eyes of the international community? You know, parts of the Western Hemisphere are looking at the way our sort of political and police forces are handling some of these really, really egregious scenes and seeing us as a place that's descending into hatred. Are we actually going to just end up exacerbating the problem here? Or are we going to end up seeing situations around synagogues that unfortunately we have already seen very recently as well? I think there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and I don't actually think that they can be answered because the information on the background of these individuals just simply won't be able to be provided.
Why do you think the government changed its mind on this policy? What were their reasons for that, Robert?
I think they probably, a large number of those international students were saying that it just simply wasn't palatable for them to come without bringing dependents, and having sort of tried to make a virtue out of this scheme, these 75 individuals coming over, they have made their own bed and been very keen to keep this sort of altruism. And of course, they were talking about this being the training up of future leaders of Gaza as well. So they put a lot of political capital behind this scheme, and if it was to fall apart because of such an issue, then it really would make them look equally ridiculous. So I think they've actually been bounced into it for political reasons.
Robert, thank you. That's Robert Bates there from the Centre for Migration Control. He's the research director. Let's hear a voice note from Steve.
I would urge you to remind listeners that if Rachel Reeves puts income tax up, this is a choice that Labour are making. They could choose to send back illegal immigrants. They could choose to stop paying foreign nationals benefits. They could cut the welfare bill. They could clamp down on benefit fraud on PIP. This all amounts to tens of billions of pounds. They're choosing not to do that, but instead, once again, to hammer working people.
Steve, thank you. If you want to send in a voice note, 0344 499 1000 is the way to do it, just like Steve did. Terry in Birmingham says, good afternoon, Peter. Good afternoon, Terry. Gazan students and families, which local deserving persons are going to miss out on somewhere to live and school places to facilitate these people, says Terry. That's a good question. I also just want to apologise. I came into the studio not wearing my jacket. I've now got my jacket on. Slight costume change, of course. My jacket has my poppy on it. I wasn't wearing a poppy for most of the first hour. I do apologise for that. I was actually in Victoria Station in London today, and there were lots of people, including the Armed Forces Minister Al Cairns and many cadets and members of the armed services who were there. I was having a chat with a couple of them and indeed offered to buy them a couple of cups of tea as well and put some money in their collection, because the poppy appeal is on at the moment. Wear your poppy with pride, and if you're presenting a programme, remember to have your jacket on with your poppy. That's my advice to you. Lots more coming up on Rachel Reeves. We'll cover that in the next hour. Of course, we'll get your views on that, and Liam Halligan, the economist, who is coming up in just a few minutes. We'll get his thoughts on what the budget could contain, what it should it contain, and how much trouble we're in. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you very much for all your comments and questions. And yes, I've straightened my collar. All is well. The poppy is on. All is good. And there's lots to talk about. It's all good for me, but not so good for Rachel Reeves. She is under the spotlight again because of all the problems she's having with this scandal in regard to her being registered to rent out her flat, her home, I should say, in Southwark, in South London. Is she going to have to pay back £38,000? The bigger issue for a lot of us is, are we going to be screwed at the budget as well? Keir Starmer says he has full confidence in her. Always a worry when he expresses full confidence in anybody, as Peter Mandelson and Louise Hay and many, many others have found, Angela Rayner as well. So will Rachel Reeves actually give that budget? He says yes. We'll talk about what's going to be in it, what should be in it, what the implications of a rise in income tax will be. The economist Liam Halligan will be with us in just a second. I want to make sure we get as many calls, voice notes, texts thoughts from you on between now and 7 in this rapidly developing political story. We've also been told, Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, told us a little bit earlier on that he expects there to be those actual emails between Nicholas Joycey, who is Rachel Reeves' husband, and the letting agency to be put in the public domain in the next hour. We'll keep a very close eye on the old Downing Street Twitter and emails for that, let me tell you. We'll also talk to Kinsey Schofield this hour and get the very happy thoughts of Sean Custis, because Newcastle, his team, have beaten their rivals in the Carabao Cup and will now face Fulham. Lots to discuss. Be sure to get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the words talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note like Stuart and Darren have. We'll play them in a second. 0344 499 1000. Same number for WhatsApp text messages and to give me a ring. Let's get started here on Talk Drive. Well, as I say, you've been reacting to the breaking news. Keir Starmer and his independent advisor on ministerial standards, Nicholas Joycey, have been passed new information, emails sent and received for the Chancellor's husband. He is called Nicholas Joycey. He's a senior civil servant at DEFRA, the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, about their rental arrangements. Downing Street has said that at Afternoon Lobby, which is just the afternoon briefing for political journalists. We'll find out what's in those emails. Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, tells us very soon, probably in the next hour or so. As soon as we know anything, we will, of course. As soon as I know it, you'll know it. The Prime Minister's spokesman declined to give further details, but has insisted Sir Keir has full confidence in Rachel Reeves and she will deliver the budget on the 26th of November. Well, let's see. Let's get your reaction and then we'll go to Liam Halligan, the Economist. Stuart has a voice note first.
This government are so incompetent. They are hopeless, useless, hapless, and everything else in their private lives as well as in their work. At least they're 100% consistent. 14 years wasn't long enough to get ready, prepare themselves for it. They need at least 30. Hell knows what the reform will inherit.
Stuart, thank you. Let's hear from Darren.
Starmer might think he's got confidence in the Chancellor, but what he doesn't know and accept is that everyone in the country has no confidence in him.
Really, really interesting one, Darren. And Mark in Norfolk also says, Keir Starmer's next 3 steps. Step 1, try very hard to hang on to Rachel Reeves. Step 2, smile as Rachel Reeves delivers a ruinous budget. Step 3, sack Rachel Reeves and blame her for everything, from the invasion of Poland in 1939 to Donald Trump's haircut. Mark, you've given us all a smile. Let's speak to Liam Halligan, who will, is a very smiley man, but no doubt will deliver some doom and gloom in regard to what's happening in the budget. Liam, can Rachel Reeves hang on? How serious is this scandal, do you think?
It's serious in the sense, Peter, that you'd think somebody who is Chancellor of the Exchequer would, be administratively competent enough to carry out a very simple thing in the grand scheme of things, like renting out a house. The Prime Minister says, "Oh, it was an honest mistake. No further action will be taken." And ordinary people will be thinking, well, that's not how, HMRC treats me when I make a simple mistake, or other parts of the state that I'm dealing with. The state can be, pretty authoritarian. You're guilty till proven innocent when you're dealing with a lot of
and ignorance is no defence. Ignorance is no defence.
Particularly when it comes to tax. So it does seem, it's yet another reason that alarm bells are ringing just about how competent is this person with the best will in the world, with a private office, with, hot and cold running state-funded helpers on tap to help her run not just her office, but her life. That doesn't bother me. Of course, if you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer, you hold a great office of state.
Private office wouldn't get involved with something like a matter like this.
They wouldn't, but it's not as if her professional life isn't supported.
Yep.
It's not as if her and her husband aren't, meant to be administratively competent at the very, very least. He's a senior civil servant. But anyway, look, I think Mark had it exactly right. As so often, the punters are a lot sharper than a lot of the political and media elite. Of course Starmer's going to keep her in place because he wants her to deliver the tax rises, and then she's going to take all the heat from that, and then if he needs to, he can sack her. That's how politics works. It's a pretty soulless operation, and it's very much a contact sport, as Rachel Reeves has learned since becoming Chancellor.
And indeed is learning every day, and with every hour this scandal grows. Let's just see a reaction from the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, a little bit earlier on today. He spoke to the BBC.
I think the Prime Minister needs to show some backbone. We need to have a proper investigation into exactly what has happened. This seems to be an attempt just to put this whole thing to bed with a quick exchange of letters, I believe, last night. And this was a Prime Minister who, when he came into office on the steps of Downing Street, talked about restoring the dignity and integrity of government. And we've seen a whole litany of these instances, Angela Rayner, Louise Hay, and others who have fallen well short of that standard. As if he's to stand by his word, then I think he should be concluding her position is untenable.
Mel Stride there, the Shadow Chancellor. This scandal, no doubt we'll hear more from Jack Elsom, as I say. Pretty sure we'll get those emails, and if we get them before 7 o'clock, as soon as I have them, you'll have them. We'll put them on the screen and we'll tell you what's in them. Liam, I wonder if we could talk more generally about the budget and what the speculation is. Obviously, you know this far better than I. You know, a few weeks before a budget, you always get these test balloons floated, see what happens, see what the speculation is and what might actually happen. Elisa in Chelmsford has been in touch, and she says, "Hi Peter, I'm one of those pensioners who paid national insurance for over 45 years but no longer need to. If income tax goes up, I will be financially worse off. There are many in my situation, and it seems that this government constantly wants to target those of us who've given to society all our lives. Should Elisa and people like her be worried, Liam?"
Well, I think what I'd say at the outset, Peter, is that the Treasury in the last few months, I think, has behaved disgracefully. The special advisors to the Chancellor, the amount of the amount of kites that they've flown in the newspapers, oh, there's going to be a mansion tax, oh, there's not going to be a mansion tax. Well, that's completely killed large parts of the property market. That has a major impact on people's lives, livelihoods, and on productivity. Oh, we may be raiding pensions, we may not be raiding pensions. You know, that means huge amounts of time and effort and people's money goes into, you know, rearranging their affairs very, very quickly, paying absolutely usurious fees to accountants and tax advisors when they've just done the right thing and saved in their pension. So this kind of kite flying, I got it right that time, didn't I, has major economic implications and serious impacts on people's quality of life. And it may all be for now, because so a lot of these people, of course, are paid by the taxpayer, nice big fat public sector pensions for them as they play political parlour games, messing with people's lives, using them like lab rats, people that have done the right thing, as I say, and saved into their pension. More generally, it does seem, because Rachel Reeves, last October, she did the biggest tax-raising budget, 40 billion quid extra a year in taxes, 30 billion quid extra a year in borrowing, the biggest tax-raising budget since 1993. Peter, you'll know that as a student of politics. And yet she said after that budget repeatedly, I'm not going to come back for more. That's a once in a lifetime budget. We fixed the foundations. You know, we never have a budget like that again, not on my watch. The very next year, here we are again, because her tax rises were so significant, because she whacked up the minimum wage, because she basically went after businesses to raise money, to give a bung to her mates in the public sector unions. We're here again because those tax rises had a big impact on growth, because the national insurance increases for employers have killed off hiring, unemployment's gone up. We have a situation where the labour market is stagnant and the economy growth has been curtailed. And because she raised those taxes, the UK's fiscal situation has actually become a lot worse than we thought. And my fear, Peter, it's not as if she hasn't got a difficult task, she has. And it's not as if she inherited a wonderful situation, because she didn't. The public finances were very, very weak after 14 years of Tory rule. That should definitely be said. But ideologically, all Labour can do when they've got a problem with the national accounts, rather than implementing spending controls, rather than being responsible, it's all on extra taxation. And my fear is that extra taxation, even if, you know, particularly a big tax like income tax, it's just going to slow down the economy even more, and I'm afraid make the public finances potentially even weaker.
Liam, thank you. That's Liam Halligan, the economist, bringing us up to date with all of that. Appreciate that. Let's hear a voice note from David in the Cotswolds. This is on Rachel Reeves.
Reeves' action or inaction shows that she's incompetent. Since Starmer stood on a ticket of accountability, she should not only face a fine, but should resign. because it just demonstrates how incompetent she is for the position of number 2 in the country.
Thank you for that, David. Let's go to Kevin in Portsmouth, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Kevin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter. Hang on a second.
No worries.
Yeah, ambulance has gone past. Right.
Okay.
I think Rachel Reeves has actually struck a great blow for freedom and common sense. This is a £900 certificate thing she needs.
Yep.
Permit. Now, it's either 1,000 pages thick and it's going to take you 3 lifetimes to fill in to warrant that price, or the local council is saying you're a rich landowner and you can afford it, we're simply going to charge you a stupid amount of money for a largely meaningless piece of paper. Either way, by not getting this license, she's pointed out that you can quite easily rent a place. No reason why you should have a license. You do need to have the gas safe thing because that's dangerous and invisible. You do
need to comply with the law, though, Kevin, don't you? You can't just ignore stuff.
Yeah, of course, and absolutely. I don't disagree with you for a minute. But she just made a very powerful case for changing that law.
That's a very interesting perspective, Kevin. And I do wonder, actually, whether a lot of this red tape is needed necessarily. And of course, local councils will add those things and will know that in an area like Southwark, which can be quite a nice area, some of it's not great, but some of it's very nice, you can say, okay, well, these people who are renting out their homes, let's just charge them a few £100 for a form of certificate that, as far as I understand it, you don't actually need in all areas of the country.
Well, exactly that. It's a local thing. It's not even, as I understand it, it's not even in the whole of Southwark.
Right.
It's just in bits of it.
Okay.
So, oh, that's a nice affluent area. You're going to get nice high rents. Good. We're going to charge you for a meaningless piece of paper. The gas certificate, absolutely right. The electricity certificate, absolutely right. The rest of it is covered by legislation, and it's a contract between the renter and the rentor. So, I mean, why do we need certificates?
Okay. Kevin, thank you for your thoughts on that. There's just been some breaking news from the White House, and this is that the Trump administration is going to limit the number of refugees admitted to the United States to 7,500. It's going to give priority to white South Africans. Now, the president previously, of course, has shown all sorts of footage, including in the Oval Office, to Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the president of South Africa, saying that white people, especially on farms, are being very badly treated by the South African government, and indeed by poachers, and of course by those who would steal the land or repossess the land, as they may perhaps see it. This is a notice published today, will apply to the next fiscal year, marks a dramatic cut from the previous limit of 125,000. It was now only 7,500. And white South Africans, that is a very, very interesting aspect of this, which I'm sure many people will have an opinion on. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Just on Rachel Reeves, Southwark Council has given us a statement, a spokesperson. I hate this. A spokesperson says it's a spokesman or spokeswoman. Is it a spokesman or is it a spokeswoman? Maybe they don't know. Maybe the person doesn't know. Southwark Council requires private landlords to acquire a selective licence in order to rent out their homes if they live in specific areas. This is in order to protect tenants and ensure landlords are complying with housing requirements, providing safe, well-maintained homes. Selective licences are acquired by sending applications to the council, which we then assess and approve subject to conditions. When we become aware of an unlicensed property, we issue a warning letter advising the landlord that they have 21 days to apply for a licence. Enforcement actions such as fines are reserved for those who do not apply within that time, or where a property is found to be in an unsafe condition. We cannot comment on individual cases. So this is another element that we don't know. Are they within that 21-day period? Are the Reeve Joyces applying for that licence? Is that in a queue somewhere? Are they going to be expedited? Are they going to be put to the top of the queue? Lots of people getting in touch about all of that. Brian says Rachel from account should do a U-turn on everything she did in her last budget, and maybe we'll get the economy up and running again. On the gas and students, quite a number of people getting in touch about this. This is the news that gas and students are to be admitted to the UK, but now in another government U-turn, they are to be allowed to have their dependents to come with them. Pete no, actually, I'll come to Pete in a minute. Leslie says Gazan refugees and their families now being welcomed. Even Egypt wouldn't accept the refugees because of security. Starmer is putting us all at risk from Hamas. Stephen in Manchester. I'm sure the Gazan students and their families will feel at home here with all the pro-Palestinian protests and Gaza MPs and won't be spreading anti-Semitism or hatred of Israel, says Stephen. Yeah, I know what you mean. Linda from Worcestershire says, love the show as usual. Regarding the Gazan student dependence, so we're going to import even more Jew and the West haters to the UK. We've got more than enough. That shouldn't even be here anyway. This sets a precedent now to every other student from every other country in the world that they want to come here. I'm so sick of it to the pit of my stomach. And Chloe has been in touch on this with a voice note as well. Let's hear from Chloe.
Hi Peter, these Gazan students with their families coming over, if my son or daughter went to study abroad, I wouldn't be expected to go with them, would I? So why is it different for these students from Gaza? And where are these families going to live? Are we going to be supporting them as well?
I think we probably are, and in terms of the amount of money you need, it's only between £6,000 and £7,000 depending on where you are in the country. It takes a lot more than £6,000 or £7,000 to support someone, and I wonder what support we're giving them. I'm not against the principle of people going to other countries to learn things at universities. I did it. I went to America for a year, but I was on a scholarship and I could support myself. Can these people support themselves? Should they be here in the first place? Are they a security risk? Now, some of them won't be security risks. They won't, but we won't have reliable data about that. I had to go through all sorts of things when I went to America. I had to have scans of my lungs to make sure I didn't have TB. I had to fill out security forms. I had to go to the embassy. I had to do all sorts of things to make sure that I was a legitimate person to study for a year in America, which I was, and then I had to return immediately afterwards. My question is, will these students be compelled to return to Gaza? Will their dependents be compelled to return to Gaza after their course is finished? Because they should be. They have to be. This cannot be a backdoor into our country, because guess what? That's not fair. We're going to take more of your calls, texts, voice notes and other messages next here on Talk.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. on and on and on, tax, 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 tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect if you're just spending on welfare and other non-growth related areas. This is absolutely a doom spiral.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just been having a look at my tweets there during the break, and thanks to everybody who has been in touch. Lots and lots of messages coming in, so thank you for those, including from Angela, who says, another day, another scandal in government. Stephen says, we hold politicians to account for breaking these stupid laws because no one lets us off. They invented these stupid laws and only they can fix the system. From fishing licences to a rental licence, they should face the same stupid laws on us as us. Mike says, I'd accept if it was a mistake, if it was accepted as a mistake, that I had genuinely made a mistake, but it wouldn't be, would it? I'd be hung out to dry. Nick says, if only bookmakers ran a book on Keir's sackings, could have made an absolute fortune each time Starmer stated he had full confidence in someone. It's the case of death, and this government must be aware they are becoming a laughing stock. Nick, all I want to say is I have full confidence in you. Okay, so thank you for that. Ed says, I bet Starmer's getting his jet warmed up to get out of the country so he doesn't have to answer any questions on this. Anne says, I believe the tenants can now reclaim the rent they've paid to date. That is something that has certainly been speculated about, whether the tenants in Rachel Reeves' home will get £38,000 back, which is all the rent they would have paid. Amy says, call me cynical, but I think Starmer is going to be hoping that these new emails clear Rachel Reeves, so that when the aftermath of the budget inevitably comes, he's going to want to blame her if it doesn't go down well, despite him being First Lord of the Treasury as well as Prime Minister. Amy, just because you're cynical doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong. Maddie said, I've just tuned out of the show and saw that students from Gaza will be allowed dependents to join them. Since when do students have dependents? They earn no money. And one final one from David says, if Reeves has to repay the rent to your tenants, don't be surprised to see a one-off tenant refund tax in the next budget. Well, thank you for that. I want to talk now about America. And Michael Graham is with us, the US political commentator and managing director of Inside Sources. Michael, good afternoon.
Happy to be here, thanks.
Just one breaking story perhaps we can get your opinion on, which is Donald Trump saying that he is going to vastly reduce the number of refugees coming to the United States, and that white South Africans are going to be put to the top of the list for this. No doubt this will be controversial. What's your take on it?
Well, it's no surprise that Donald Trump wants to reduce the number of refugees coming to the U.S. because, I mean, that's kind of standard Donald Trump, approach, which is, fewer people who don't live here coming to live here. The white South African issue has been an issue for him for a while. I wonder, I don't know. People have different experiences. Maybe he has. I had a friend who was from South Africa when I was in college. So at the time I followed a little more closely, kind of thing. So maybe he has some personal thing, or maybe, and maybe those images that he showed the South African president when they were together.
Yeah, to Cyril Ramaphosa in the White House, in the Oval Office.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
he had the little video show or whatever. Or maybe he just thinks that it'll annoy the people that he likes to annoy, or all three. But, one of the things that Donald Trump likes to do is to take the arguments that have been used against him and then turn them so that the people who he opposes are forced to make arguments they used to reject. So we're having the same thing over the government shutdown over here, where Democrats said for a decade, every time you shut the government down, it's terrible. Now they've shut the government down, and Trump has no problem with that. So I think he wants to see Democrats saying, no, don't let those refugees in. They're the wrong color. And if he can get them to say that, that'll be a good day in the world of Donald Trump.
Well, he will be accused of being racist for this, won't he?
But once again, what are they saying? You can't let those people in. They're the wrong color. And once you say the phrase wrong color, you've given up the game if you're part of the identity politics progressive movement in the West. where they, of course, have no problem with judging people as better or worse based on the color of their skin. So their objection is not that there's a color line. Their objection is where you draw it. And the position of the traditional center right in the United States is that color just shouldn't matter. You should just do it based on merit and need. And so if there's if a country has a volcano that explodes, it doesn't matter if the people who need to flee are white, black, whatever. They just need to flee. But that has not been the position of Trump's opponents. And so it could be a combination of genuine concern and the opportunity to highlight his opponent's poor politics.
And a volcanic issue in itself. Michael, tell us about tariffs on China, lowering of those, and the meeting with President Xi, which Donald Trump characteristically said was a 12 out of 10.
Everything he says is great. It's that whole, what actually happened.
My favorite bit, my favorite thing that he's ever done, ever in the history of Donald Trump, was wearing the cap that read, Trump was right about everything. That was just like, that was next level. That was next level.
No, my favorite is when he tries to get foreign leaders and member of Congress to wear Trump 2028 hats.
Brilliant.
Because of course the Constitution makes it impossible for him to run for president again, but he likes to tweak people about it. And
4 more years.
Like if you get that it's just trolling, it's just, he's just messing with people. He's trying to affect the political playing field. You don't take it seriously, it's one thing, but if you take it seriously, it's very, very different. But on the one hand, you could argue that everything that Trump is doing now didn't need to happen because he picked the fight with China from the beginning. When he came back in the second term, he had what did he call it, Liberation Day, and he announced that flurry of tariffs. Of course, the UK got caught up in it too, but you guys were also one of the first countries to work out a deal. And so the critics of Trump say he's just bragging about cleaning up a mess that he made. On the other hand, there's this bigger macro argument that even some people who aren't fans of Trump are kind of conceding, which is the big picture is that Trump is weaning America, and he's trying to help wean Europe too off of China. That he sees in the long term, or his advisors maybe might be more accurate, see that in the long term, there is going to be some kind of conflict between China and the West, whether it's specifically over Taiwan or whether it's over the region that they'll want hegemony across the entire South Pacific, or it's going to be economic. In other words, that China is going to set terms that just are so disadvantageous to the West, we're going to have to wean them off. And so if you look at this as kind of a series, when you're dating someone and you want to break up, but you kind of, I don't know what to say. And so you start, you leave stuff in the sink and you stop showing up on time. That kind of, you can see this. And by the way, I will add to that column announcing that we are going to return to actual nuclear weapons testing as opposed to using computer simulations. That's clearly a shot fired at 3 targets: North Korea, Russia, and China, which has been really going faster on its nuclear weapons than anyone else. And so the people who like what Trump's doing say it's part of a piece of a slow breakup. You're not going to break up with China in the sense that no one's going to do business together.
Sure, of course,
But the days from the Clinton through Obama, where it was just an open pipeline of, hey, do whatever you want, China, we'll do whatever we want, we won't think about the long-term consequences, those days are over. And so he's creating separation. That's one of the arguments.
Michael, thank you. That's Michael Graham there, US political commentator and managing editor of Inside Sources. Thank you to him. Breaking news here on Talk: Harvey Wheeler, which is the estate agents used by Rachel Reeves to rent out her property in South London, have apologised to her for an oversight after they did not apply for a licence on her behalf, having offered to do so. So that is Harvey Wheeler, which is the estate agent used by Rachel Reeves and her husband Nicholas Joycey to rent out their home in South London. They've apologised to Rachel Reeves and Nicholas Joycey for an oversight that they did not apply for a licence on her behalf, having offered to do so. So that is an estate agent in South London. It seems that the Chancellor may well be out of the woods on that one. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. I think we're expecting the publication of those emails very, very soon. In the break, actually, I'm going to check my email because I'm on the Downing Street mailing list. I'll see if they've actually sent them out, because they might not be on Twitter just yet. As soon as I have them, you'll have them. We'll talk to Kinsey Schofield in just a second as well about all the royal news. Prince Andrew could face a private prosecution over sexual assault allegations. Kinsey will be live in the studio in just a moment. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much for all your messages. We'll get to those in a second. Certainly the Gazan issue is something that so many people are getting in touch about. Dave in Lancashire says this government believes there's one rule for them and one rule for everyone else. P.S. How many of the Gazan students will actually go back to Gaza? And Keith says, I'm sure Starmer just needs to look at his Justice Secretary to deliver the next budget should Rachel Reeves fall on her sword. Says Keith, I don't want David Lammy anywhere near the public finances, I must say, the Celebrity Mastermind contestant and Deputy Prime Minister. Right then, let's speak to Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Great to have you in the studio, Kinsey. How are you?
Good to see you.
Great to see you back. And Prince Andrew could face a private prosecution over allegations of sexual assault, corruption and misconduct in public office. Where is this coming from?
This is coming from the Telegraph and, you know, classic Republicans. We're seeing them try to take advantage of a situation that the king inherited. I feel like the monarchy should have taken care of this a long time ago. I recently interviewed Steve Levine, who's the author of The Spider, about Jeffrey Epstein, and he said the one reason we never see Prince Andrew step foot in the United States is because he's afraid that the government, you know, law enforcement would swoop in and grab him upon, you know, feet on the ground, whether it's to interview him or whether it's because there are similar investigations going on in the United States about the sexual assault allegations. We're going to continue to see these types of stories pop up until Prince Andrew completely disappears and goes away. Is he concerned about this latest report? I actually think he potentially is, because he's seen the royal family take more of a step to distance themselves from him over the last few weeks, and he might not feel like he has the king's protection behind him today as confidently as he did a month ago. But this is something that we've seen regularly pop up over the last few years, these new investigations, and more people saying, you know, if they won't hold you accountable, we will find a way to hold you accountable, even with Virginia's lawsuit that he ultimately settled.
What is the latest on Royal Lodge and whether Prince Andrew will move out of it?
I'm hearing it's not if, it's when. There are reports coming from the Daily Beast that he has agreed to it, but maybe it's not the 2 homes he wants in return, but millions of dollars. You know, the Sun does report he wants 2 homes in return to leave Royal Lodge, but the Daily Beast says, okay, if you don't want me on the Windsor estate, which I think is understandable, that's where Prince William's going to make his home base, then I want millions of dollars. I hope that the royal family, that seems like blackmail to me. I hope the royal family wouldn't give in to a demand like that, considering the fact that I really don't think the prince has a leg to stand on here. This is a crisis situation, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the king. And I don't think the king is necessarily weak, but it certainly makes him appear weak that he's not taking a harsher stance when it comes to his brother. I think he has a soft heart. I think he's a sweet man. And ultimately, the public wants a tougher stance on in this scenario.
Tell us what Prince Andrew has been doing recently. Do we have any information about what he's been up to?
Well, I have heard that he's recently been shooting with friends.
Perfectly ordinary shooting weekend.
Right, acting as if there are no problems. He also is a fan of Call of Duty, the video game, according to American outlets. So video games, shooting weekends with friends, and not staying under the radar the way you would hope he would when the whole, you know, world is talking about the monarchy not holding a member of their own family accountable for, if nothing else, he says he's innocent of the allegations against him with Virginia, the association with a convicted sex offender in the United States, Jeffrey Epstein, guilt by association to a lot of the public.
Does he have many friends left?
If he did, I think we'd be hearing more from them. I think that they would be telling us we are being too harsh, and that I think that they would be critical and of the media, and they'd be speaking out, talking about what a good person both him and Fergie are, and we're not hearing those stories lately.
Kinsey, thank you as always. Kinsey Schofield there, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Great to have her in the studio. And what do you think about all of this in regard to Prince Andrew? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Plenty of thoughts coming into the building about Rachel Reeves as well. Mike in Murfield says, where does she move to if she loses her job? That's a good point. I suppose there's a constituency home, but also rented accommodation. That's sometimes what politicians do if they lose their job. I don't think Rachel Reeves is going to lose her job on this one. I think she's probably going to be all right. Pete says this could be a ploy for Rachel to be able to resign so that she can't be blamed for the up-and-coming budget. Also, she will have had a solicitor who will have guided her and advised her on the do's and don'ts regarding renting. Well, I should say that Harvey Wheeler, the estate agents used by Rachel Reeves to rent out her property in South London, have apologised to her for what they call an oversight after they did not apply for a licence on her behalf. They offered to do so, but they failed to do so. So is it all their fault? Is it hers? More on this between now and 7 o'clock, and we may even see those emails as well. Stay with us here on Talk.
My friend was murdered last year up on the High Street. Girl I know was murdered in Southall Park. The government are failing us. I'm so scared for my children. I have a 22-year-old son and I'm begging him to move out of the country. What are these politicians doing to us? They're putting our children in so much danger. They're putting everyone in danger. British people never vote against their government.
Yeah.
They're going to push us through it because they're not listening to us.
What they're not probably planning to do is reduce benefits in any shape or form. And they seem to think that you can go on taxing ordinary hard-working people as well as the so-called rich. On and on and on, tax. And that doesn't have an effect on the whole economy, a negative effect if you're just spending on welfare and other non-growth related areas. This is absolutely a doom spiral.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good point from Leslie. He says, "Hi Peter, there's more info emerging tonight, so why on earth did Starmer make that statement last night without the full story?" Well, you may ask, Leslie. There's lots of unanswered questions. Keith says, "Is it possible Rachel actually wants the boot?" I don't think she does, Keith. And Jane says, "Even if you ask someone to do something, you double and treble check everything, especially if you're in the public eye, more so if you're a government minister, your property, you make sure everything is in place. No excuses," says Jane. Let's talk about the sport.
Sports news from The Sun.
Well, skipping into the studio with a verse of Leslie Gore's Sunshine, Lollipops and Rainbows is Sean Custis, the head of sport at The Sun, because Newcastle won in the Carabao Cup last night.
And I was astonished to discover you knew that.
Yes, indeed. I managed to look it up on the sun.co.uk/sport because I thought, my friend Sean, is he going to be a happy man or a less happy man today? You must be delighted.
And as the holders, we're still there, looking to win it twice in a row. Beat Spurs. It was pretty comfortable, really. Spurs were a bit disappointing. It wasn't a great game, to be fair, but
and Fulham in the next round, I know that as well.
Fulham at home in the next round. You're skipping ahead of me slightly, but yes, Newcastle v Fulham in the next round. Arsenal, easy winners against Brighton. They play Palace in the next round, who thumped Liverpool. We'll get onto a bit about Liverpool in a minute, but they thumped Liverpool at Anfield. Cardiff will be playing Chelsea. Cardiff had beaten Wrexham the night before, and Chelsea had an eventful 4-3 win over Wolves. And it's Man City v Brentford as well, which is the other tie in the quarterfinals. Man City having won at Swansea last night. And as we know, as we discussed previously, Brentford thumped Grimsby the night before. So that's it. That's up to date. Looks all set for Newcastle to win the trophy again, actually.
Excellent. Could there be a fixture pile-up, or will there be people who are worried about playing too much?
Well, there is a very bad fixture pile-up at the moment because Arsenal v Palace, they can't find a date for it, because Palace play in the Conference League that week, and it would mean they'd have to play 2 games in 3 days, and there's all sorts of shenanigans going on about that, about where they can fit it in. Right now, they can't find anywhere to put it, but they have to get it done really before the quarterfinals. So before, I'm trying to think now, when will they have to get it done by? Well, by Christmas,
yeah,
somehow. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they're going to do it at the moment, but there's a lot of discussions going on about that one.
Sure, well, we will find out. I'm sure time will tell. Let's talk about the Premier League. Tell us about Liverpool's manager. He's under a lot of pressure.
Well, he played a reduced strength side, as we a bit predicted here last night. And some of the teams did, but theirs was a really reduced strength side. I mean, it was kids and anybody who doesn't really play, with Chiesa up front, which he's in and out of the first team. And he was asking for it, Slot, really. Now, this is a man who's lost a lot of games. You want to stop the rot, if you like. This was a time when you really could have done with just dropping a couple of your stars into that game for this not to happen. Look, there were other teams in the round who did play below strength, but this was really, it wasn't the right thing for him to do, in my view, with being under so much pressure. Huge backlash from Liverpool fans about it. Not a backlash enough to say he should go, but he's not done himself any favours. And Liverpool's next 3 games, right? Villa at home on Saturday. Villa are on a great run. Real Madrid, even you know, Peter, Real Madrid, they're big.
They're a big team.
And then
they're a good team.
And then away to Manchester City.
Yeah.
That's his next 3, and he's on a run of having lost 6 out of 7.
Yeah.
It doesn't
it's a big reversal
well.
of fortune, because of course Liverpool won the Premier League
last year. They won the Premier League last year.
See,
but this year, that's absolutely stunning. You can
I've so much to teach you.
You can come to the sports quiz with me at the weekend. I think Liverpool fans are right to be a little bit concerned, but as I say, they're not demanding he'd leave it. I mean, it's a bit ridiculous when you won the Premier League last season, but this is Slot's team now. It's not Jurgen Klopp's. Last year's was Jurgen Klopp's a bit, with a few tweaks from Slot. This is his team now. Look, Wirtz hasn't fired, £110 million. Isak's injured, £125 million. He hasn't fired either. But that's not enough. That's not enough of an excuse. He needs to sort this team out, and so far he hasn't. And he knows it. And he looks a bit like a man under pressure as well. Why he made himself hostage to fortune last night, I do not know, because that could have been a comfortable get that win, restore a bit of confidence going into the weekend. But now all eyes are on Liverpool's biggest thing this weekend is Liverpool Aston Villa. I don't think there's anything bigger than that.
Just one burning question I have before you go, Sean. How many polo shirts do you own? You're quite the clothes horse. I mean, you've quite a few polo shirts. What do you think?
I don't know. 10?
10? Okay. Yeah. I have 21 shirts.
Polo shirts?
No, just normal shirts like.
Oh,
like
I've got
shirts.
a lot of shirts.
Okay, you got a lot of shirts as well.
Yeah, but I tend not to wear them. T-shirts
Okay.
mainly. But
Okay.
I've got. Would you call this?
I don't know. It's got long sleeves, hasn't
Long
it?
sleeves
So
doesn't
yeah,
count?
long sleeve polo shirt. I don't know.
Anyway, what is the point? Is
I just wondered. I've
I
always
see,
seen you in a
right.
polo shirt. I've never seen you wearing anything else. So I just
All right,
wondered.
yeah, I've got a lot.
I've got a lot.
Yes.
Clearly, Sean Costas the clothes horse, as he is known on the shop floor of the Sun. Thank you for the sport update.
Cheers.
As always, much appreciated. That is Sean Costas, the head of sport at the Sun. A happy man today because of Newcastle's victory. They go on to face Fulham. If you have some thoughts on the Rachel Reeves issue or anything else, let me know. 0344 499 1000. Someone who definitely has thoughts on it is Kemi Badenoch. This is what she said earlier on today.
You want more of something, you don't tax it. It is a very simple principle. She put taxes on jobs, jobs disappeared. They tax farmers, farmers are closing down. They tax businesses. They're taxing everything. They're taxing education. We're seeing schools close down because they can't afford Labour's taxes. Someone needs to get a grip on it. So Keir Starmer, you need to make sure that your Chancellor gets a grip. If she cannot get a grip on controlling spending, then you need to sack her. Enough is enough.
Kemi Badenoch there, the leader of the Conservative Party, with her thoughts on Rachel Reeves. There have been some developments since then. Harvey Wheeler, the estate agents used by Rachel Reeves to rent out her property in South London, have apologised to her for an oversight after they did not apply for a licence on her behalf. They said they would, they didn't, and she is feeling the political heat as a result of that. Simon in Pamber End said, where is Pamber End? Where's Pamber End? I don't know where that is. Sorry, my English geography is dreadful. All these ministers that rent out their homes while they live it up in their Grace and Favour residence better watch out when they get voted out at the next election, because the new Renters' Rights Act prevents no-fault evictions, so they won't be able to move back into their homes and will have to find somewhere else to live. Refugee hotels, maybe, says Simon. Apparently, Pamber End is in Hampshire. I did not know that. I know that now, and thank you to the top team behind the glass, specifically Sam, for telling me that. Mike in Colchester says, regarding real estate agents and their apology to Rachel Reeves for not applying for a rental licence, this should make no difference. My accountant calculates my VAT return, but the responsibility is on me and me alone that the information submitted is correct, that I comply with the law. Just because the agent made an error does not absolve her from her responsibilities. Did she notice that her bank account contained £900 more than it should have, says Mike in Colchester. Well, certainly my bank account, if it had £900 more than I was expecting it to be, I would certainly notice it. Maybe Rachel Reeves didn't. Maybe her husband didn't notice that. Or maybe it's the estate agent's fault. Who is to blame for this? What do you think? Also, Gary says, the plot thickens, still no excuse in the eyes of law. Ignorance is not a defence, or is it in this case? Gary, I don't think ignorance is a defence in any case, and certainly if you were to go and say, I don't know what the law is in a court case, that would not be taken as a defence, as you correctly say. Dave is in London and has given me a shout on 0344 499 1000. Dave, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I want to ask you a question about pensioners, Peter.
Okay.
But very quickly, when Southwark Council said that they need that licence to ensure that houses are safe for tenants, well, how could they... Well, if they haven't signed one off, what's the gas and the electric certificate?
Well, is that invalid? And the question as well, Dave, is will those tenants get back the money because it wasn't done properly? Dave, stay where you are for a second. I promise you'll take your pension question, but I've got some breaking news now, and that is that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has told the Prime Minister emails between her and her husband and the letting agency showed they had agreed that the agency would apply for the licence on our behalf, and that they have confirmed today that they did not take the application forward. Well, Dave, I don't know about you, but if someone says I'm going to charge you £954 for making a licence application, and then you get an invoice and that's not on the invoice, is that their fault? Is that your fault for not checking? I mean, surely you would give them a ring and say, hold on, weren't you going to charge us £954 for a licence? But you didn't. Should you have done that? Dave, your thoughts?
I rent a property out, and if the estate agent said, don't worry, we'll sort out the gas certificate, and then they fail to do it, I'm liable, not them.
Yeah.
So anyway, pensions.
Yes, go ahead.
So you've been having this conversation about tax, 2% on income tax, 2% off of national insurance for hammer pensioners.
Yes.
Here's my question. What is a pensioner?
That's a very good point, because presumably someone over the state pension age. Is that a reasonable answer to that?
Well, every time I hear this being discussed, they say it'll affect people over 65. I'm 65 next month, but I can't get my pension until I'm 66 and a half. So am I a pensioner next month? Does it impact me, or do I?
Yep.
Is it when you're at pension age? What is this
and
all
also,
about?
if you're someone who doesn't draw a state pension, does it not affect you? And the retirement age, of course, is moving a lot. It's a very, very good point, Dave. Thank you for it. That's Dave in London there. Darren has been in touch and says, I can tell you exactly what the checks on the Gazan students and their families will be. Have you any contacts in or had any dealings with or support for Hamas? If they say no, it will be you're in. Oh, and by the way, you're also entitled X, Y, and Z. This shouldn't be allowed here at all, but if so, it shouldn't be. If you can't come without your family, you can't come, and your responsibility should be A, B, and C, and you definitely must not do D, E, and F. But we all know how this will end, says Darren. Back to the budget. David is in London and would like to make his point clear. David, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for the call, 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say, David?
Hi, I've been involved in finance for about 35 years. I'm retired now, but I keep asking this question, Peter. Surely increasing VAT is a fairer system, and perhaps, if possible, reduce the income tax, because at least with VAT you catch out all the people who don't pay tax, because if they buy a motor car or a television, etc., they've got to pay the tax.
You've got to pay it. I mean, is that fair, or is the fairness actually in the income tax? Because if there is a system by which people are earning money and you take it at source. I mean, I suppose there are a lot of people who don't pay income tax for legally they don't pay income tax, and then there are people who illegally don't pay income tax as well because they do work cash in hand.
Well, that's right. I mean, we've now got one of the biggest black economies in Europe.
Yeah.
Barber shops, car wash, nail bars, Uber Eats.
Well, listen, I just got to stop you there and keep us both on the right side of the law. I'm sure that Uber Eats pay all their taxes and do what they should in regard to that.
No, but what about when people keep turning up? They're told who's going to turn up, and it isn't that same person who turns up.
And you're absolutely right, David. That's a absolutely pertinent issue, and one which we will return to. That's David in London there. I've literally just been handed the emails here. There's quite a lot of it, so I'm not going to read out every single bit of it. But I'll read you the covering letter from Rachel Reeves, and then in the news break I'll have a look at the emails and go through them with you afterwards. But just before we come to the news in a couple of minutes, this is a letter from Rachel Reeves. I think I'll have time to read it out. Dear Keir, further to our exchanges of letters last night, I wanted to update you with further information. Yesterday I wrote to you and said that we were not aware that a licence was necessary to let out our property based on conversations my husband had with the agency yesterday. Today, the letting agency and my husband have found correspondence confirming that on the 17th of July 2024, the letting agency said to my husband that a selective licence would be required and agreed that the agency would apply for the licence on our behalf. They've also confirmed today they did not take the application forward, in part due to a member of staff leaving the organisation. Nevertheless, as I said yesterday, I accept it was our responsibility to secure the licence. I also take responsibility for not finding this information yesterday and bringing it to your attention. As I said to you today, I am sorry about this matter and accept full responsibility for it. You rightly expect the highest standards from ministers serving in your government, and I have therefore shared the correspondence between my husband and the agency with the independent advisor on ministerial standards, that is Sir Laurie Magnus, of course, and I am happy to answer any further questions required. For full transparency, I'm publishing the emails between my husband and the agency as well as this letter. Well, I have those emails in front of me. I've just been given them by Ryan, the producer. Some of it is redacted, of course. You're dealing with email addresses and people's personal information. I'm going to go through those during the news. When you listen to the news, I will go through them and I'll bring you my update on them in just a few minutes' time. I've got my highlighter ready and I want your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Rachel Reeves telling the Prime Minister that emails between her husband and the letting agency showed they had agreed with the agency they would apply for the licence on their behalf, and that they've confirmed today they did not take the application forward. Why didn't you notice the £954 hadn't been charged to you, Rachel? Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, as promised, I've been going through all these emails with my highlighter. It looks as if Rachel Reeves is vindicated by this. From what I can see, the letting agency certainly said from these emails that they would apply for the relevant licence. She's still under pressure, though, and there's still questions about this. We're going to ask those questions in the next hour here on Talk Drive before Samara Gill comes up between 7 and 10. What do you think about Rachel Reeves? Has she shown the right judgment here? Is it right to put everything in the public domain? Surely that should have happened last night. And should Sir Keir Starmer simply have said there was nothing to see here, when clearly there were going to be many, many more questions from the media, from the public, from you, our viewers and listeners. So let me know your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. This hour, we're also going to talk about a Jewish Orthodox man locked in a London bus by a driver who said, "I don't like Jews." That is something which is this anti-Semitism, the scourge of anti-Semitism in our society continues. John Lucas is going to be with us as well, the night news editor of The Sun, in regard to what is coming up in the programme, in the paper, I should say. Tomorrow we'll talk to John in about half an hour's time. Loads to discuss. We're going to go through these emails in detail in just a second. Tom Belger, who is former editor of Labour List and now a columnist, will be with us as well. And I want to make sure that you get your voice heard. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note. We'd have plenty of those so far today. Let's have some more between now and 7. 0344 499 1000. That's the same number to send in WhatsApp text messages. You can also send me, pick up the phone and talk to me on the old dog and bone. 0344 499 1000. Stay with me here for the next hour of Talk Drive between now and 7 here on Talk. Well, my trusty highlighter lent to me by my colleague Lauren and I have been through all of this, and these are the emails that Rachel Reeves has now put in the public domain. It is absolutely clear, and I want to be totally fair to Rachel Reeves, it is absolutely clear that they did discuss with the letting agents. We have it redacted who the property owner is. We know it's Rachel Reeves and her husband Nick Joycey, who is a senior civil servant, and actually, the redaction of dear property owner is almost certainly the word Nick, and we're talking about all the different things, keys and utilities and all the rest of it, that had to be talked about and had to be negotiated with the letting agent. What we're also saying is that on the 26th of July, they certainly talked about it, the cost for different things like a gas safety certificate and also the licence. £900, you'll pay in two parts, £640 first, and then once the application has been processed, the remaining £260 is taken. As you will be requiring a selective licence, you'll also need a PAT test, which will cost £110 plus VAT. That's, of course, to check electrical items and so on. This is a requirement by the council for the licence. Shall I arrange this for you as well? I don't apply for the licence until we actually have tenants move in, so this payment won't need to be paid until after they move in. We have what we can imagine, pretty assumed to be Rachel Reeves' husband Nick Joycey saying, yes, please go ahead, arrange those on the selective licence. And then the last email on this particular thing on the 13th of August saying, at the moment, as we are only applying for the council licence, we do not need anything. And then it just sort of went away, and actually it wasn't mentioned again. So certainly Rachel Reeves telling the Prime Minister emails between her and her husband on the letting agency showed they'd agreed the agency would apply for the licence on her behalf. She's telling the truth on this, and that they confirmed today they did not take the application forward. The questions that remain in all of this is, if you'd agreed something to let out your home and then it didn't happen, well, surely it's on you as well as the property owner to actually have some sort of ownership of that and to say, what happened to that 950 quid thing that we discussed? Why haven't you charged us 950 quid? Where's it gone? But today we know that the letting agent has certainly said to Nick Joycey and Rachel Reeves, Nick Joycey is of course Rachel Reeves' husband, he's a senior civil servant, that they made a mistake in this. It was their fault and they have apologised to them. Tom Belcher is the former editor of Labour List, he's now a columnist. Tom, what do you make of this? Is there now nothing to see here, or are there questions that still remain? I certainly have questions.
Yeah, hi, good to be with you. I mean, hypocrisy, pure and simple, is always a real problem for any government. It's a charge that always sticks, isn't it? One rule for us, and trust in politics is at rock bottom, and in a way this does detract from it further. It also detracts for Labour from its control of the narrative when they've got the budget coming up. And I think for councils who are enforcing the law, and enforcing licensing regimes across the country, if landlords can say unlicensed, well, you know, the Chancellor's breached the rules too, that's not ideal. But I think it's an important but. It's an honest mistake. You know, this is, as you just said, the letting agent has admitted they should have, although they offered to apply for the license and they didn't. So we've seen Rachel cleared. I'm not sure what the latest is from the advisor, but at least initially cleared by the ministerial standards advisor. And that's not just an independent advisor, but it's one that was appointed by the Tories. So as you say, I don't think a case of nothing to see here, but I think one where we've got to hold politicians to high standards, but also to human standards. And I think, I think it's understandable they've tried to draw a line under this now. And you accept the decision of the independent government advisor.
Yeah, I mean, he will report, I presume, very, very shortly. He has the information. I can see, and anybody who reads these emails, which are now in the public domain, can see very, very quickly that Rachel Reeves has, well, is she guilty of an error of judgment here? Is her husband guilty of an error of judgment in terms of simply saying, you said you were going to charge us 950 quid for something, you haven't done that. Why haven't you done that? That's something which you would hope a senior civil servant, a very senior civil servant in the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs and husband of the Chancellor, knowing this is a big thing. They talk about confidentiality in these emails. They talk about how important that is. I just wonder whether you think Nicholas Joycey has had an error of judgment, and also more widely and much more importantly, I think, Tom, the Prime Minister here, because yesterday night there was an exchange of letters and we don't know and still don't know whether it was quite simply the Chancellor's word saying, look, there was a small mistake, I've referred myself to the independent ministerial advisor on ethics, he said it's fine, nothing to see here, off we go, when clearly, obviously, there are going to be more questions. I mean, my issue is not necessarily about a £954 charge for a licence, it's about political judgment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an understandable question to ask, isn't it? And that's why you're posing it around why there wasn't the follow-up. I mean, it's obviously Rachel Reeves, at the time this was happening, she'd just come in to take on one of the busiest jobs in the country, and her partner's a busy man as well. But it's not an excuse, is it? And crucially, a lot of people watching will be thinking, well, you know, you can't have one rule for them and one rule for us. That said, you know, it looks like the people who are responsible for upholding the law on this, you know, Southwark Council, their standard policy is simply to, presumably because it's quite common, to notify landlords that they're not licensed and need to be, give them 21 days to apply, and then if it doesn't happen, then maybe potentially, you know, there's further consequences. And Rachel Reeves absolutely isn't above the law on that, but it just didn't reach that threshold for action. As for Keir's judgment, I mean, I'm not sure what more you can do, frankly, than
well, you can do more, Tom, because you can say, well, you can say, show me the paperwork on this. Well, you can say, look, I'm the Prime Minister, I'm your boss, you're the Chancellor, you're effectively the number two. I mean, no matter what David Lammy says, the Chancellor is basically the number two. You know, show me the paperwork on this. Who knew what when? You cannot just rely on verbal assurances. No, I'm sure he trusts her and so on, and I'm sure the independent advisor looked into this, but it was very quick and there were always going to be more questions, and Downing Street wasn't able to answer very basic questions about this today and refused to answer basic questions about this today.
I mean, I don't know. I think politicians get so often criticised in these scandals for being too slow and saying they want to do things robustly, and here we are criticising them for maybe doing them too quick before they had all the facts.
Well, I mean, you could get all the facts, right. but Tom, I mean, with respect, you could very easily just say to Nick, you know, Rachel Reeves' husband, we need all the emails you had between you and the lettings firm. Can you please just, you know, look in your email, type in the search term, forward them to the independent advisor on ministerial standards. If they'd waited literally one day or literally half a day and said, you know, we were told last night, and the Daily Mail, the paper that broke this story, were told nothing to see here. Well, it turns out there isn't really much to see, but there's a little bit to see. Why not just put all the information in the public domain? That's Political Communications 101. That's Communications 101. That's PR 101. Get the information, establish the facts, and then put it in the public domain.
I think they've got to go public with as much as they can, as quickly as they can. I totally agree with that. Whether it was feasible in the time to get all the information, I don't know. I think they've acted reasonably quickly.
They have. No, I agree with you. They've acted quickly, but to put a letter exchange from the Prime Minister to the Chancellor saying, nothing to see here, I'm satisfied, off we go, nothing, everybody move on. Well, that was an error of political judgment from the Prime Minister, was it not?
I mean, he's got to trust his Chancellor, hasn't he? But you're right, it does raise the important question of why Rachel Reeves, in the first instance, seems to have suggested there wasn't an awareness that the licence was needed. She may not have known that, but whether she spoke sufficiently to her husband, whether he simply forgot that he'd had the exchange, whether she, they didn't have a time to discuss it, I simply don't know. So that's maybe the important question to ask is, why why there was that initial move from not knowing to having had the exchange previously. But I think to some extent it's clutching at straws because these are important questions, but fundamentally compared to some of the breaches we've seen in politics, don't get me wrong, occasionally quite serious under this government, particularly serious under past governments. In the recent past, we've had the last two ministerial standards advisors literally quit because they couldn't stomach some of the antics of the last government. So I think we do need to keep a sense of perspective about how serious or not some of these breaches are.
And I get that, Tom, and I think that's a very, very fair point. But I suppose the point is that I worked in politics for 3.5 years. I don't expect politicians to be perfect because I know they're not perfect. I know they're not perfect people. They have, rows with their spouses. They have kids who act out and don't do their homework. They have financial problems. They're human beings like the rest of us. But when you're Chancellor of the Exchequer, when you're Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, you want someone who has a bit of a grip on detail. And if you don't have a grip on detail, well, let's look at the emails. Let's publish those emails last night or as soon as you can or first thing this morning. The Prime Minister, the Chancellor have access to huge levels of support. They've got a huge support staff. They've got advisors. They've got private office staff who are senior civil servants. They've got loads of people who can help them with this kind of stuff. And the fact that they waited basically 24 hours to put stuff in the public domain that could have cleared up loads of questions, I think that is bad political judgment, even if this isn't the world's biggest scandal. That's my thought on it, Tom.
No, that's understandable. And if they had that information earlier, then I think you're right. But I think you're right, even if it's not some colossal moral failure by Rachel and her husband to have not followed up with their estate agent at the time or remembered to do that. Politically, you do. One of my first thoughts as a political journalist looking at this was, why on earth you wouldn't have someone who works for you or employs someone, maybe it costs a lot of money, to really dot every T, dot every I,
especially when you've just had
that you cover your back on.
Exactly,
like this,
exactly, Tom. Especially when you've just had a big scandal involving the Housing Secretary, Angela Rayner. Surely you say, right, Angela's has a total mare. She's had to resign. This has been horrendous for her and her family. She didn't pay the stamp duty. She's rightly gone. I tell you what we need to do is have someone just look into our finances, make sure everything's there, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, as you correctly say. Really interesting.
I'm not sure it's necessarily a new thing that they should be doing in reaction to that.
No, totally, I get that, but you would imagine
your entire life and go, what problems are we going to?
Totally get that, but you would imagine in the wake of
once appointed. Sorry, go on.
You would imagine once that scandal had happened, you would say actually, there's also a whole propriety and ethics team in the Cabinet Office that should be asking these questions as well. Tom, listen, thank you for your time this evening. That's Tom Belcher there, who's former editor of Labour List. He's now a columnist. And thank you to this person saying, I just heard you saying that Rachel Reeves told the Prime Minister yesterday that she didn't know she needed a licence. And today she's saying that her husband had asked the agent to get it. Surely she's contradicting herself. Why would you ask the agent to get a licence when you're saying you didn't know you needed one? Well, maybe she didn't know. Maybe the husband dealt with it. Maybe they didn't talk to each other about the licence. It is possible that is the case. And I would imagine that is what she would say. But nonetheless, you would imagine you would swiftly become an expert. If this happened to you, and if this was threatening your political career, you would imagine that you would swiftly become an expert in what licences were needed and what was not needed, and that you would make sure that you had all the information and emails at your fingertips. Steve says, I'm interested to see if Southwark Council go easy on Reeves. I'm a Southwark resident and can assure you from personal experience that they're utterly ruthless when it comes to dishing out penalties on any financial oversights. They take no excuses. Well, I wonder, will the excuse come from the letting agency? Will they pay the fine? Will they offer to do that? Certainly if I was in their communications office, if I was in the management of them, I would say, we're terribly sorry, Chancellor, we'll pay this. We screwed this up. Nigel says, I think it's great to see Rachel Reeves caught out by local council red tape. She now knows what it's like for the rest of us. It's time she paid her fines like Joe Public would have to do. David says, when an accountant I once used failed to file my returns correctly, I was liable for a fine. The HMRC inspector told me it was my name on the return, so I pay the fine. Why is Reeves' case any different? The only case is, did Reeves receive the information within 21 days? Another question we don't know the answer to, David. Hello, Peter, says Jeff in Thurrock. Great show as always. Why has a letting agency taken more than a year to realise they've made an error over a licence they're probably dealing with in every day, and only after it came into the public domain involving the Chancellor? Yeah, I think the chances of people using that letting agency in the area have gone down to some degree because of this. Lee says, I have no trust in Rachel Reeves. She needs to abide by the same rules as the rest of us. Paul is in Liverpool. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Paul, what are your thoughts on this?
Good luck. We love you, man, but you're boring the life out of us with this one. You've got to let it go. You've got to let it go. Look, do you think these rich people look at their bills and think, oh, no one's took £900, or these are drinking caviar and champagne. They don't even know what £900 is.
Come on, Paul. She's the Chancellor. If she doesn't know how to look at an invoice, if she doesn't know how to look at a bill and say, right, I've been billed for the right things and I haven't been billed for the right things, Paul, surely that's a question we need to ask about her judgment.
You ask and that's it. But you've been on it for like about a year. Oh, let it go, man. Look,
tell you what, Paul, why don't the two of us have a little sing-song and sing like Princess Elsa in what's the song? Frozen. Frozen, Let It Go. Shall we do that?
No, yeah. Even though it take me down more. I mean, I'm depressed as it is.
You don't want to hear my singing voice, let me tell you, Paul.
No.
Okay, what do we need to be talking about in this issue? What do we need to be talking about, Paul?
There's people out there with machetes, machine guns, people throwing themselves off buildings because they can't afford the electric bill. Come on, man. Come on, you're better than this.
Okay.
She might have had 50 bills for £900 not, and just thought, oh, well, that looks like it. When I look at my accounts now and then, and you see, £700 CNC or this, that, and you think, oh, what's the Oaks Council tax and thing? But you see what I mean? Because a lot of bills have, what do you call them? Just initials, And
yeah, but if you thought you were going to be, I don't know about your finances, Paul, maybe you're a multimillionaire, but in my case, if someone said, we're going to charge you, you're going to do this thing, you're going to rent out your home, we're going to charge you 950 quid, and then they didn't charge me 950 quid, I probably wouldn't sit there thinking, ooh, that's great, I have another 950 quid in my account. I would say, hold on a second here, am I properly insured? Is everything done correctly? Is that £950 taken out? As you say, Paul, look, it's not the world's biggest issue, but it does...
Only if she was looking at her accounts, Peter, and she probably doesn't.
Okay.
Why would you be bothered? You're loaded. She doesn't care.
She's the Chancellor, though. Should she not be able to keep a track of her personal finances?
That's why she doesn't care. She's the Chancellor. She's getting hundreds of thousands of pounds from here, there, and everywhere. And
it's not just quite as much as that, but it is nearly £200,000 a year. Paul, listen, thank you. We will take your thoughts under advisement there. And Dave says, I agree with Paul, says Dave in Dorset. Matt is a gas engineer, and he says, I carry out landlord's gas safety certification. It is the law that the owner of the property is responsible for the gas safety under the Gas Safety Installation and Use Regulations 1998. Rachel Reeves has broken the law. She cannot blame the letting agents, says Matt. Listen, thank you for that. I love it when people who have the information at their fingertips know this stuff. We've had accountants ringing in, we've had people in finance, we've got Matt there who's a gas engineer. He knows this back to front. I love when people bring their personal experience or just their opinions to the table. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to talk about something else. Paul will be delighted in a second that we're changing the topic, and we're going to talk about a Jewish, although it's a horrible, horrible story, about a Jewish Orthodox man locked in a London bus by a driver who said, I don't like Jews. Honestly, there's so much anti-Semitism around. We're going to talk about it more in just a second. We'll also find out what is happening in The Sun tomorrow, what they're covering. I would imagine Paul will not be happy because the Sun will almost certainly be covering Rachel Reeves tomorrow. I'm sure it's one of their big stories. We'll hear all of that from John Lucas in just a minute. But in the meantime, stay with us. Give us a ring if you have something to get off your chest, even if it's that we should be talking about something else. Paul, I totally accept what you're saying. 0344 499 1000.
She's not a stupid person, despite what some people might think. She's a very intelligent person and would be seen desperately trying to do the right thing by the law. Of course she should. And this, I think, is a mistake, of course. But I think that it's embarrassing and difficult because it's the sort of thing when you're dealing with taxes and licensing and registration that has legs. Yeah. And it's the sort of thing that investigative journalists perfectly legitimately can and will continue to look through. What are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, and especially after Angela Rayner not paying her full stamp duty.
My friend was murdered last year up on the high street. Girl I know was murdered in Southall Park. The government are failing us. I'm so scared for my children. I have a 22-year-old son and I'm begging him to move out of the country. What are these politicians doing to us? They're putting our children in so much danger. They're putting everyone in danger. British people never vote against their government.
Yeah.
They're going to push us to it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Mary in County Down who says, I'm with Paul, you're boring us to death with this Rachel Reeves story enough already. There's mass slaughter of innocent people going on in Sudan. I couldn't care about Rachel's administrative error, says Mary in County Down. The Gazan students question is a big one as well. This is students from Gaza who've been brought over, a U-turn by the government saying that they can bring dependents. Elisa from Chelmsford has been in touch on this. This is what she has said in a voice note.
My reaction when I first heard about Gazan students coming to this country was fear. I've got to be honest with you. I fear that they may have been some of the people that were rejoicing in the street after October the 7th. We saw the images. How do we know that the students coming didn't rejoice after October the 7th? How do we know that their huge families, because they do have big families, didn't rejoice after October 7th? How do we know that they don't support Hamas? I don't believe that the security checks will find this out. I really fear for the security of our country, and I do think that they will stay here once they're here.
Elisa, thank you for that. Let's speak to Nicole Lampert, a journalist and campaigner against anti-Semitism. There are a couple of stories I want to talk to you about. Just on this story in the Telegraph about Gazan students allowed to bring their families to Britain. Nicole, what's your thought on that?
Our universities are already a kind of cesspit of terrorist support, and it's seemingly no one knows what to do about it. I did a piece that was in the Telegraph on Tuesday talking to some academics about how even they are cowed, and sometimes it's their own it's their colleagues who are not only taking part in it but are running these celebrations on October 7 that happened, the celebrations of the anniversary of October 7. We saw on university campuses all around the country that there were actual celebrations happening instead of vigils. So I am worried. Of course, I also empathise hugely. There are probably no universities left in Gaza, certainly, hardly any buildings. So I empathise hugely, but we're breaking the rules. So the government changed the rules just very recently in the last couple of years, where students weren't allowed to bring their dependents. So I think the previous caller was right that it's likely that once they come, they will stay. And that's even if they, let's hope that they don't have any terrorist background. But I really hope that if they are here, they're kept an eye on so that they're not stirring up more trouble and more hatred and more support for terrorism than we already have, which is a lot.
And it is that question of guaranteeing that every single person who comes here from Gaza, whether they're a student, whether they're a dependent, is not a Hamas supporter. And we can't know that, Nicole. We can't know that because it's not as if you can just ring up Hamas and say, can you tell us if these people supported you or not? The civil infrastructure in Gaza just, isn't there. Hamas is a terrorist organisation. And we just don't know a lot of information about these people. They may all be, cone-headed academics who want to study, the next medical breakthrough, and that would be a good thing if it were the case. But the point of this is we don't know, and that points to me to a wider problem when it comes to people coming across for academic courses, in that, again, like people coming across in small boats, to some extent, we do not know who these people are, what their views are, or what their views on this country and our values are.
Yeah, a big problem is that this isn't just, they're certainly being used by the far left in a way. So there was a demonstration at UCL on that's the University of London on Friday, and at least one of the people was someone from Egypt, for example, and they were screaming Zionists off our campus. And there's a separate thing that our own government and university officials and whoever else aren't willing to address this huge problem. These people are masked, but they shouldn't be allowed into the university campus. And once they're doing something like that, like screaming for other people to be thrown off the campus, and they should be thrown off. So that there is that problem. And then also with these people, we need to check sometimes that it is on their social media. And the other thing is that it's not just Hamas that's a problem. There's the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So there's quite a few terrorist groups. And I've seen a poll just from this week of Palestinians, and still 60% of Palestinians still support Hamas. And it is lower in the Gaza Strip, but most of that is because of what's happened. And I should just say that this week I have spoken to 2 people in the Gaza Strip who are anti-Hamas, but they're few in number. They admit that.
Tell us about this, closer to home, tell us about this horrendous story. A strictly Orthodox man allegedly racially abused by a London bus driver who says, I don't like Jewish people. I mean, the detail of this is horrendous. Nicole, just talk us through it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth finding the video, although it's really heartbreaking. So he's a black Jewish man called David Abraham. He's originally from Africa. He's now part of the Haredi, which is the ultra-Orthodox community that lives in Stamford Hill. And while he was paying, he dropped his bank card dropped into where they take the payment.
Yeah, so you're doing the card reader thing, and his by mistake his bank card sort of dropped into the bit where the driver sits the cab. Yeah.
Yeah, and he asked for it back, and the driver allegedly said something like, "You're from Mossad, and I don't like Jews." So
yeah,
no.
the quote we have here in regard to what David Abraham told the Jewish Chronicle was, "No, I am not giving it to you. I don't want to see a Mossad agent in my face. I don't like Jewish people."
Yeah. And then as the journey continued for some time, and other people that were apparently on the bus asked the driver to get the card, and he refused. And then he still refused at the end of the journey. So David has done this video of himself crying and asking the driver to please give him the card. There's no one else. The bus has stopped, so really he should just get off.
Yeah.
And apparently he was locked in the bus for 40 minutes. Until finally the police came and retrieved the card, and then he's gone to the police to report a hate crime, and it's being looked into by the
the Metropolitan Police have said no arrests have been made and an investigation is underway. Spokesman for Transport for London said, "We are concerned to hear of these allegations and are supporting the bus operator Arriva, who are investigating. We take a zero tolerance approach to all forms of hate crime and work with the police to pursue anyone who is abusive to our customers or staff. We encourage anyone who experienced or witnessed the incident to contact the police." Whether this is proven to be a hate crime or not, well, it certainly sounds from the evidence we have and the testimony of David Abraham that it certainly sounds as if there is a case to answer here. This is part of a wider pattern, isn't it, Nicole? There are so many reasonably low-level things. They're horrendous, I'm sure, for David Abraham and people who experience them, but it's the urine and the feces that are thrown at schools, it's the intimidation of people, it's someone being locked in a bus for 40 minutes, it's all sorts of things that are horrendous and horrible for those people to have, and they just keep happening.
Yeah, Sarah Sackman, one of the Labour MPs, a Jewish Labour MP, has called it an ambience of anti-Semitism. Yeah. It does feel like it's kind of low level, as you say, and it's kind of unreported.
I'm not trivialising it for a second. That it must be. I'm sure you, and absolutely no, you're not either, and wouldn't. But I mean, the really big stuff, the big horrendous stuff, like the Manchester terrorist attack, for example. That's the 10 out of 10. This is sort of 2 or 3 out of 10. But it's still awful for the people involved, and it shows there's so much hatred of Jewish people in our society.
Yeah, even just my son's at university, and one of his friends brought a girl home who started talking about how much she hated Jews, and his friend was totally shocked, and that just feels normalised, and that reminded me of what happened on the bus. This guy is just like, I don't like Jews, and I don't think he would say that to anyone else. And, just going back to the university, similarly, they're screaming Zionists off our campus. Or I saw some footage from last night of Michael Gove being shouted at that he was a prostitute to Zionists. And it's just... because they're allowed to get away with it, that is the problem. There's no one saying this is wrong. We had Bob Villan, we still don't know what's going to happen with his case. We had Bob Villan screaming it from the Glastonbury stage. We had, when he was on Louis Theroux not only appeared to acknowledge it, but agreed with him and took it even further and to say Zionists are basically the cause of white supremacy.
124 days, Nicole. It's been 124 days. We're doing this every day on this programme. I don't know if you've seen this. We're doing this every day on this programme. Today is day 2. It's been 124 days since Pascal Robinson Foster shouted death, death to the IDF on the stage at Glastonbury. It's been 124 days. It's been 124 days since that happened, and there it is, 124 days. We've got a picture there of Pascal Robinson Foster and the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police. In fairness, they have said there have been some developments in that, but Nicole, you know, and I know this has taken far too long. Whether it's Avon and Somerset Police's fault, whether it's the Crown Prosecution Service's fault, whoever's fault it is, it's taken far too long, and there have been many, many other times when things that haven't involved people being anti-Semitic, which I, in my strongly held personal believe that Pascal Robinson Foster has, well, actually, things happen a lot faster, don't they, Nicole?
Yeah, when you're calling for death to anyone, then surely that is incitement. That's how it feels to me. So And that's what we still are seeing on our university campuses as well. And in fact, that death to the IDF, that's been repeated on many university campuses. And after he said it, and it was broadcast live on the BBC, then there was a spike in anti-Semitism. And again, you know, we're talking about kind of low level, high level. Often it is low level, but it doesn't make it any different. So when 2 people were killed in Manchester, I think we all shouted as a community, we told you.
Yes,
and we didn't want to sound hysterical. You know, we don't want.
Well, you're right,
on
Nicole.
here talking about this and like anti-Semitism.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many Jewish people I spoke to who said it is awful, it is dreadful, but we are not surprised. This was a logical end to all of this. Nicole, thank you as always. Nicole Lambert, the journalist and indefatigable campaigner against anti-Semitism. Thank you for your thoughts this evening. Whatever your thoughts are, let me know. 0344 499 1000. As promised, we'll talk to John Lucas from The Sun about what's in the paper tomorrow. I have a feeling that Rachel Reeves might be in there somewhere. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks so much to everybody who has got in touch. Nigel says Reeves needs to own her mistake and resign. Far more serious than Boris's birthday cake. John and Kent says, I don't want any Gazans in this country. The government are deliberately putting the population at risk for their own ideological purposes. Zoe in Lancashire, afternoon Peter. Reeves will crawl out of this. Everyone in Labour always do. I really don't know how any of them are still in government. Such sleaze, they don't walk anymore. They crawl and slither, says Zoe in Lancashire. And Gareth in Suffolk says, great show again, Peter. Thank you, Gareth. Letting agents confirmed they advised to obtain a licence. I wonder if she informed her mortgage lender. She rent out and declared the income for tax. Well, I would imagine she's looking into all of that, as is The Sun and indeed many, many other journalists as well. John Lucas is the night news editor of the paper. I would imagine Rachel Reeves will be popping up in the paper tomorrow at some stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Highly embarrassing for the Chancellor. You'd think if any minister is going to be across their own financial affairs, it's going to be the Chancellor.
Especially housing, when you've had the former Housing Secretary Angela Rayner, who fell on her sword because of stamp duty. You would imagine, you would say, hold on a second, let's just have another look here and make sure everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
That's it. Well, we've just had, yeah, as you say, Rayner's just gone. Yeah. It's surprising how many MPs actually have these homes that they're renting out. You'd think there'd be some sort of, maybe they should think about this, have some sort of service to make sure that all these MPs have got their ducks in a row. So, I mean, we've had tonight some of the questions have been answered about you know, who was at fault. Obviously, ultimately, it's her property, her responsibility. We have had emails from the husband that showed that he did contact the letting agency, and they said, yeah, we'll sort that licence out. Whether or not she's CC'd in all these emails, who knows, because she'd previously said, well, I didn't realise that you had to have this licence, but her husband did. So what's going on? And it's all just very embarrassing. And also the other sort of aspect of it that a lot of people are picking up on is sort of how quick Keir Starmer is when he has these issues with his ministers, to straight out the gate say, I've got absolute faith in them. And then you find out as the days and weeks go on, actually he didn't really know
all the facts.
He wasn't armed with all that information to say that.
I totally agree with this. I totally agree with you in this. I don't think it's about £954, about who, you know, whether this was done properly or not. Oversights happen. I think it's about judgment. I think it's about the political judgment of a Prime Minister who immediately says, nothing to see here, it's all fine, I have full confidence in my Chancellor, you know, off you go, when actually he knew, and any communications professional, any journalist would know, that there are going to be a lot more questions that are coming. We'll return to this story, I am sure. Let's talk about the migrant crisis. This is, of course, the Afghan migrant appearing in court charged with murdering a stranger after the triple stabbing in West London. We know the case continues and proceedings are active, so we'll be careful, but no doubt there's a lot to talk about in regard to this, John.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy, you remember this was the horrible incident that happened earlier in the week in Uxbridge. This terrible tragedy of the dog walker Wayne Broadhurst, who had sort of stumbled into the scene as a knife attack was unfolding, and you know, if you've been unfortunate enough to see this video, it's caused a lot of anger, and people are saying, you know, this has to be the sort of the high watermark of the migration crisis. Anyway, the guy who's been arrested and charged with this count of murder, Safi Dawood, he's an Afghan. He appeared in court today, so it's his first appearance. We sort of call it a straight up and down, where you get the very basic facts of what happened, and then he'll go to Crown Court.
They don't even necessarily enter a plea at this stage.
He can't enter a plea because it's in the lower court. He's not allowed to. You know, normally people deny something as serious as this.
Of course, yeah.
We did get some more detail about what happened. We can't go into too much detail, but what the court heard is that he'd been lodging at this address with this chap. He'd been in his room and he'd allegedly WhatsApped the landlord and said, can you come to my room? At that point, he's then allegedly launched this attack on the landlord, who fortunately was recovering in hospital. This incident spilled out into the street, and what we've found is that other neighbours actually also tried to intervene and subdue this guy. Unfortunately, Mr. Broadhurst, walking past with his dog, absolute wrong place, wrong time, bore the brunt of it. And we've had a statement today from his family, which we didn't have before. They're calling Wayne, who was a binman, basically. He was a devoted and hard-working man who spent his life serving his community. He says he worked hard his whole life, never shied away from improving his community. He loved animals, Liverpool Football Club, and his loss has left a deep void, not only in the hearts of his family, but across the community he quietly cared for. So, you know, this is someone who's very well loved, a completely innocent member of the public. And, you know, it's part of this bigger, the bigger questions about the migration issue and, you know, and how that's being dealt with by the government. And in fact, we'll have other stories in tomorrow's paper from other court cases, which I can't talk about now, but you'll see in the paper tomorrow, There's many issues like this cropping up every day.
Just briefly, let's talk about the invasion of the deadly black widows. Spiders could establish themselves in Britain if the government fails to stop stowaway creepy crawlies flooding into the country.
Yes, we remember a few years ago we got very worked up about these false widows, which give a nasty little bite, and lots of us don't. Let's be honest, most people don't like spiders. Some people do. But
they're our friends.
They are in a way.
They kill insects.
They are, but we don't really like them. And we had this big sort of thing about false widows, but the real bad boys are the black widows. And what pest control experts are saying is that government has sort of taken their eye off the ball with these things. So they managed to get into not just produce, but they'll get into electrical goods being brought over from Japan, and they're finding more and more of these things. They found a big load of them in Kent a couple of weeks ago, and the pest control guys are doing what they can and they're taking them in, but they're warning that these things are getting established here. Now the black widow wouldn't necessarily be deadly to an adult, a healthy adult, but for children.
Yeah, you want vulnerable
elderly,
people.
Yeah, you've got to look out for them.
Careful.
So the false widows will have this they'll be black or brown, and they have that sort of little skull markings on their body.
I know what we're talking about,
Black widows are going to be much bigger. They're about 1.5 inches. They can be shiny black, and they'll have a red-orange hourglass pattern on their abdomen.
That sounds pretty scary.
So look out for them and report them if you
report them. Okay. I must say I'm not really scared of spiders. I was once asked by a housemate to remove a spider, to take out the spider, and I took him out. We had a drink. Nice guy, web developer. Right then, irritating. Now then, tell us, was that a good joke, a bad joke, or is it sort of 6-7? That's called a seamless link. A seamless link. What does this mean? What is 6-7? What does it mean?
Well, you don't know what it means.
Well, it's kind of like it's okay, or it's sort of, or ish, or no.
So 6-7. This is all those Gen Z people feeling smug that they're the youngest generation, and with all the rest of us. I mean, not that we're far
Declare
off
your interest, John. Declare your interest.
All the rest of us got to catch up with their slang.
Right.
They're now finding actually there's another generation right behind them, Generation Alpha. They've got their own slang, even though some of them are about 4 or 5 years old, like my son.
Right.
And they've got their own slang coming, and one of it.
Does your son say 6-7?
He started to say 6-7.
What is it?
Yeah.
It's just like
so 6-7. It's like it's a brain rot piece of slang, is how they describe it, and it essentially means it doesn't mean anything. But if you ask the kid, "Did you have a good day at school?" They go 6-7, 6-7.
Is it slightly,
and it's driving teachers and parents nuts?
Is it slightly like saying 6 of one, half a dozen of the other? Is it slightly sort of saying, well, a bit of this, bit of that, it's all fine?
You can use it to express indifference, but also you can say maybe something was good, and you'll say 6-7, 6-7. It can literally mean anything and nothing, and it's been crowned the phrase of the year by Dictionary.com, which is the big online word emporium.
Yes.
And the other examples of this are skibbity toilet.
Skibbity toilet.
You've not heard this one?
I haven't. No, I'm not very down with the kids.
Yeah. Again.
I used to be a young fogey. Now I'm just a fogey.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and it happens to us all. There's always another generation just coming up with their own words.
Skibbity toilet. What does skibbity toilet mean?
Again, I don't really know.
No one knows.
They just say it.
Right.
And it annoys the adults, and that is part of the fun.
Okay.
That they've got slang words that really mean nothing, and it
very
just
strange. Well, there'll be a full guide to all of this, I'm sure, in the Sun tomorrow. John, thank you. That's John Lucas there, the night news editor of the paper. You can read all those stories in the paper, or indeed at thesun.co.uk. Let us know your thoughts in the next 10 minutes or so before Samara Gill comes, of course, between 7 and 10. 0344 499 1000.
because they're not.
Axel was ordering suspicious Amazon packages to a neighbour's house. The neighbour complained he kept having to receive them, and Alphonse said, "I will tell Axel to stop ordering them." Did he question his son as to what he was ordering online? Why he was ordering a knife on Amazon? We don't know. But what we do know is they failed to stop their son. They bought him the tablet that he researched genocide on. They allowed him to conceal ricin in his messy bedroom. They did not alert the police and have him detained when, a week prior to the massacre, Alphonse stopped his son from getting in a cab to go to his old school, presumably to commit another attack.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to the person who says, "Oh my goodness, you're now talking about spiders. Get back to talking about Rachel Reeves. This is too flipping scary. I'm terrified of them." And Debbie, who says, "Spiders, eek. I'd rather hear about the awful government. LOL." Gary says, when Rishi Sunak was Chancellor, he was prosecuted and fined for breaching COVID rules after a slice of birthday cake was thrust into his hand while waiting for a meeting with Boris Johnson to start. Labour demanded that he quit, claiming lawbreakers could not be rule makers. Regardless of the circumstances, the bottom line is that Reeves has broken the law because, as the landlord, she was ultimately responsible for ensuring that the regulations around letting her property were followed, and since lawbreakers cannot be lawmakers, she should go, says Gary. Andrew Thatcham says, "So from what I can see, the ethics advisor and Prime Minister had nothing other than her word, and they decided there was nothing to see. Why did they do that without any of this new evidence? This still stinks." Kathleen in London on selective licensing says, "I had a flat under Enfield Council through a housing association, and when the selective licensing kicked in, I as the landlord had to complete all the forms myself. The housing association, who I would receive my rental payment from, wouldn't, and I believe couldn't get involved. You had to create an account with the council and do it yourself." Well, of course, Kathleen, that's really interesting to hear your experience. We know that different councils do things in different ways. Indeed, not all councils have these kind of regulations. Theo Usherwood is with us, the political commentator, for a final thought on this. Theo, where do you think the Prime Minister and indeed the Chancellor are this evening with all of this? Because it's a very good point there in terms of saying, well, actually, hold on, why was the Independent Ethics Advisor relying on her word for this? What do you think?
He's quite right, and it was a point that I was going to bring up with you immediately on this particular issue, is that Keir Starmer met with his independent advisor, Sir Laurie Magnus, and decided, without any detailed investigation, Peter, that Rachel Reeves was in the clear. They didn't even bother to ask for further emails, and actually, as it turns out, this email at first glance, although your correspondent, I think you said Gary is right to say that it is ultimately Rachel Reeves's responsibility, puts the blame on the estate agent, accepts the blame for not having applied for a licence. But now Rachel Reeves faces a bill of more than £38,000 because, having let the property without a licence to the current tenants, they're entitled to a refund.
Certainly, and also, I mean, there's so many questions that still remain in all of this. The biggest one, I think, is political judgment. I think the Prime Minister actually has more questions to answer than the Chancellor. I think, you know, exactly what you said there a second ago, simply saying, well, I trust her, independent advisor says it's fine, nothing to see here, let's move on. When they knew there were going to be more questions about this, was there not a Director of Communications or, you know, a more junior advisor saying, hold on a second, the journalists are going to ask this, this, and this. One of the things I had to do as a special advisor was hostile briefings and basically say, what are all, let's do the list of all the possibly difficult questions they're going to ask. Do we have an answer to that, yes or no? And look, it was so obvious that the questions were going to be asked here. I'm not sure there's grip here. I'm not sure the right judgment is here, Theo.
Well, it's two things. Firstly, to your point, the obvious questions are going to be asked. We know exactly the questions that are going to be asked because those questions were asked only at the beginning of last month, when the crisis gripped the government over Angela Rayner. People went straight to the solicitors involved and said, you know, asked them a question about whether they had advised the then Deputy Prime Minister and Community Secretary about the need to go and apply and check whether she would have to pay the increased stamp duty on a second home.
Yes.
So we know that the first time I saw this story, I was like, well, the first thing that journalists are going to go and do is to knock on the door and find the estate agency involved, to find out whether they'd provided any advice about whether whether additional on the particular issue in question, Peter. And so, you know, this is again, to your point about the Prime Minister's judgment. You would have thought that it would be necessary. You thought that it would be just obvious to take a breath, do a full investigation, and as it would have turned out, actually this full investigation...
It would have been fine. Instead, you're absolutely right. Instead, these questions remain. Theo, we'll have to leave it there, but the political commentator Theo Washerwood, thank you for joining me this evening. Samara Gill is with me in the studio. You're looking a little bit perkier, a little bit more colour in your cheeks than the last time I saw you in the makeup room.
Yes, we were doing a What Just Happened Halloween special, and as per usual, I'm totally sort of put out by whatever producer Chuck wants me to do, and I was basically a dead Juliet from Romeo and Juliet. So yeah, if you do want to see that, that'll be out on Friday. Actually, no, Saturday morning. Actually, Friday, 9 p.m. too. Wow, yeah, I might as well be dead. I'm brain dead at the moment.
Don't be silly. What's coming up in your programme?
We're going to talk about these London councillors. They're elected to serve us, and what's been found is that a lot of them are campaigning to be MPs in Bangladesh.